Greetings, adventurers, and welcome back to the Den of the Drake. Other dragons hoard gold, while I hoard internet cringe. Have you guys seen that there are people out there who really think D&D is a replacement for therapy? Yeah, okay. Like watching my buddy play a Gandalf knockoff with a thing for goblins is gonna— Drake, there's someone at the door asking for you. Spray him with the hose. I tried already, but that only made him smell worse.
Hello, son!
So, who was it? The FBI, don't worry about it.
Oh, why don't you come outside? Daddy misses you.
Wait. Did that guy just say he was your dad? Yes. But you're— I am. And he's— Stop it. Oh my god. I am warning you. Your dad is the bard that seduced— Yes, my dad is the bard that seduced the dragon. You. That explains so much. Oh man, he looks rough. No wonder you've been avoiding him all these years. How do you think he found us? First off, he's the one who abandoned me. Second, I got no clue. I've been using the sponsor of today's video, Aura, to hide all my personal data to make it impossible for him or anyone else to find me. Aura monitors your personal data across billions of data points like the dark web and public court records to alert you if your identity has been stolen or if data brokers are selling your personal information. It even comes with a VPN for secure browsing, but somehow he still found a way back into my life. Look, can you just talk to him so he leaves? No, he's only here because he wants money.
Come on, I just need some money.
See? What I see is a smelly homeless person digging through my azaleas looking for a spare key. Will you please take care of this? For the last time, Dad, I hoard cringe, not gold. I don't have any money.
Ah, crap, I forgot you were the lame one.
The lame one? How many other dragon bastards do you have?
I don't know. When you've been with as many mythical creatures as I have, it all just kinda blends together. I thought you would be more understanding of your own papa. Your boyfriend is a kobold.
He's not my boyfriend, he's my evil minion. Forget it. I'm not giving you any money, so what can I do to get you off my front lawn so I can go back to pretending you don't exist?
Well, my boy, it's a dangerous world we live in. Last year, Dal suffered a data breach that exposed 3.9 million customer records, and Ticketmaster lost 560 million customer records to hackers. And if that wasn't bad enough, the company responsible for conducting most of the nation's background checks had a breach so big that every American social security number may have been compromised. I think that—
What are you doing?
I heard you doing an Aura ad read on the other side of the door and wanted to feel included.
Oh no! You don't get to abandon me and Mom and then just waltz back here and pretend like you give a shit about my ad reads. You know I read the internet for a living, right, Dad? You know how much trauma it takes to choose that career path? It's a lot, and none of it is the good kind. You completely ruined my—
Dad, is that really you?
Son?
What?
Oh, how I've missed you, Papa!
You hooked up with a cybersecurity hub?
Yes, I did, and I've never been more proud. Look at what my boy has grown into. He has real-time alerts for data breaches, legally binding data broker opt-outs to stop companies from selling your personal data, a password manager, and a parental control hub. Ah, my boy is almost as good of a father as I am.
You abandoned me?
I know you've fallen on some hard times, Papa, but I'm here to help. I'm the best and most affordable cybersecurity hub on the market. With Aura, anyone can afford to be fully protected. Plus, with a link in the description, you and all of Drake's followers can get free 2-week trials of Aura to see if they were personally affected by any data breaches, while also supporting the channel.
Oh, my boy! My boy! I've never been more proud! Come now, Aura. Let's go to the park and throw the old pigskin around.
I love you, Dad.
What the f— I'm not leaving myself or my loved ones vulnerable to data breaches anymore. And if you want the security and peace of mind that I have, you can go to aura.com/denofthedrake to get Aura for 2 whole weeks absolutely free. Plenty of time for Aura to do its work and dig up anyone who might be selling your personal data. It's a great way to support my channel, and I would like to thank Aura for their continued support. Link is in the description. Anyways, like I was saying, I definitely don't need therapy. But you know who absolutely does? The star of today's RPG horror story saga. The saga I have for you today stars a player whose narcissism, desperate desire for control, hedonistic perversions, and repeated manipulation makes even a P. Diddy party look like the inside of a confessional. Throw in a dash of femcel shenanigans and you got yourself a player who's in the running for one of the worst problem players we have ever had on this channel. 9 parts, dear viewer. This saga has 9 parts. Dear God, I'm gonna be in this recording booth for like 10 hours. So put your waders on, because just like KSI, we're stuck in the thick of it. And if we're lucky, we'll drown. Now, without any further delay, let's go ahead and dive right into the horrifying world of r/RPG horror stories. Enjoy. This week's saga comes from Reddit user Blue Vieira. Part 1 is titled The Ballad of Iris, Infinite Unsexy, Part 1 of 2. Trigger warning: mentions of SA, general creepiness, and failed sluttery. My current gaming group is filled with wonderful people who I consider to be found family. They're hilarious, they're supportive, they're beautiful inside and out. The person who brought us together, not so much. This is the story of a single problem our group had with our former DM, the person we shall call Iris. At the time of these stories, our group consisted of the DM, Iris, and various players who I will refer to by their various character classes as they come up. Iris, supposedly an asexual person, had a very odd relationship with sex and sexual content. This, combined with Iris's odd and seemingly random decision-making in-game, led to some very uncomfortable moments in the various games they ran. Some of these stories I witnessed. Some other players told me about after the fact. For context, the group has a strict no SA and always fade to black rule, and our games have always been pretty much safe for work. However, the rules never seem to apply to Iris. My first bit of sexual content with Iris was when I was making my first character for our traditional fantasy setting, and I settled on a living doll healer that a rich father had made to care for his sickly daughter. In the middle of talking about this extremely wholesome story where this little girl gets my character as a gift to protect and care for her, Iris cut in with,
"Do you think the father would have made her anatomically correct so he can use her in other ways too?"
And I just kinda sat there for a second in confused and stunned silence. I believe Iris picked up on my uncomfortable state as they quickly accepted my no, her entire purpose is healing, and hastily changed the subject. At the time, this seemed like a poorly thought out question, but in context with the other stories, it helps paint a rather gross picture. Psychic told me later that in the prequel campaign that after Iris railroaded Psychic's character into dying, Iris forced Psychic to play a clone of the same character made and controlled by a villain who ripped a chunk of hair off of Psychic's head earlier on. This same villain had been using the clone as a pleasure doll up until Psychic was forced to play them. It was a while after this in the same campaign, and I had needed to retire the doll character and make a new character after Iris forced me to have the doll out her entire backstory to the party, or they would withhold a level up when we got our next, much larger Crimson Flag. The party, my new idiot in tow, went to a bar to celebrate officially joining the Adventurers Guild. In general, it was a great way to introduce my new character to the group, and was silly and fun. And then 2 terrible mini-stories happened back to back. First, Psychic, an anxious character afraid of their own magic, decided to ride the high of joining the Adventurers Guild and gathered the courage to flirt with a patron of the bar, who turned out to be a florist named Leia. Leia, being another anxiety-riddled idiot but pretending to be bold, invited Psychic to go on a walk in the starlight, which eventually led to Leia dragging Psychic to her house. There, our 2 anxiety-riddled friends made out a bit, and then Iris prompted Psychic for a sex performance role, something that none of us had discussed or agreed to, and rolled for Leia as well. Psychic rolls okay, but for whatever reason, when Leia rolls low, Iris has her have a panic attack. This, of course, has Psychic say they stop and try to comfort the panicking NPC, trying to stop the scene, and Iris has Leia insist they continue. Psychic tried to back out, citing the panic attack and that their character may be being ace anyways, but Iris has Leia keep pushing with lines like,
"She wants this. She feels bad. Oh, she wants you."
Psychic eventually relents and allows the act to happen in a fade to black, obviously reluctantly. This was our first weird encounter with Leia, who we're pretty sure would spontaneously become a big bad evil guy, but that's a different story. The second odd encounter that came out of that bar crawl is one I feel slightly responsible for, as the NPC involved was one I had made as part of my new backstory. but Iris definitely took it places none of us were comfortable with. Barbarian, a sweet gay Leonin who was exploring his sexuality, met up with the NPC Loxodon guard, Mr. Egg. Mr. Egg was the first openly gay character Barbarian met in the game, so we had some really really great roleplay exploring being open with that with Mr. Egg, which led to Mr. Egg inviting Barbarian to go see his weapon collection, which Barbarian, a budding forge master, eagerly accepted. It was seemingly a cute but awkward moment, which was immediately ruined by Iris asking for a sexual performance role from Barbarian. Apparently, Iris thought that it was obvious this was where that would go, while Barbarian's player was of the opinion that Barbarian wasn't ready for that. After a bit of pushing, Barbarian rolls for performance, and while I don't remember the roll, a 15 or 16 maybe, I do remember Iris describing it was painful and uncomfortable. This was made even worse by Iris telling Barbarian that he was on the bottom as,
"He's bigger than you don't have a choice."
This elicited nervous noises and awkward silence. Iris being the only one who seemingly didn't care that they just insinuated that Barb was SA'd by the guard, who was supposed to be my character's friend. Thankfully, after Barbarian carefully avoided Mr. Egg the next day, the guard never appeared again. Hopping over to a campaign that lasted exactly one session before Iris canceled it, after I made an entire custom culture and multiple maps for them, we encounter another one of Psychic's characters, an Arachne who has been raised by a cult as the Chosen One. The Arachne came to my character's home for some intel and tried to shake hands with Rogue and myself. Iris prompted Rogue for a perception check as her oddball character sniffed Psychic's hand and said that her fingers smelled like another woman. I, being the wise and intuitive person I am, said, "I don't get it," which earned us an explanation that Psychic's character had been pleasuring the cultist leader. This came as a shock to Psychic, who had never said that, agreed to that, roleplayed that, or even had been told that. In fact, what Psychic had been told was that she saw the cult leader as a mother figure. This never received any explanation. Okay, so before we unpack all of that, I just kinda got a general disclaimer for my commentary from this point forward. These stories are very long and a lot happens, so I'm just gonna be kinda cherry picking the stuff I want to talk about and probably not gonna cover everything that Iris does. But just because I don't talk about something doesn't mean that I condone it, because one, I probably already talked about it in a previous story. Iris really likes to cover all her bases. And two, I have faith in you that you don't need a cartoon dragon to tell you that sexual harassment is bad. That being said, part 1. This was part 1. My God, lady, take a cold shower. 1, because you gotta calm down those abhorrent urges of yours, and 2, I don't need any more information to know that you smell like an unwashed dumpster. Someone want to tell Iris that asexual means that you don't experience sexual attraction, because I think she might be confused.
I'm asexual.
Yeah, asexual offender, you fucking deviant. The idea that you're just gonna drop something like this in someone's lap and not get a reaction short of abject horror and disgust is baffling to me. You'd probably get a better reaction if you just dropped a dead tuna in their lap. Bed-related activities are always a touchy subject in RPGs, and trust me, Bloodborne is my favorite game of all time. I can tolerate and even sympathize with a healthy amount of doll simping. But you cannot, and I repeat, cannot, just sexualize another person's character out of frickin' nowhere. It's weird, it's creepy, it's uncomfortable, and it makes you look like you're coming into what's supposed to be a casual fun time with a less than savory definition of fun time. I know that 100% of my viewers are certified Giga Chads who absolutely slay any social situation they find themselves in, but I'm gonna offer this advice anyway. If you're on the fence about adding any kind of sexual content to your game, just don't. Can some spice enhance the game? I mean, sure, it is a big part of romance, but at the same time, there's just so much more that can go wrong to the point where it's rarely worth it. If it's absolutely necessary, then stick with the old fade to black, because that's the safest and most effective way to do it in most forms of media, not just D&D. If you're at a point where you need to add sexual content to your game to have fun, you're at a point where you don't need a cartoon dragon, you need a therapist, or Jesus, or both. Part 2 is titled The Ballad of Iris, Infinite Unsexy, Part 2 of 2. So Iris had, and presumably still has, a rather irritating habit of starting new campaigns and then immediately canceling them. For whatever reason, this didn't seem like a problem at the time, perhaps because the group was some truly wonderful people. But regardless, 3 campaigns lasted longer than any of the others. Most of the stories in Part 1 were from the traditional fantasy campaign. The 1920s campaign, using Mage the Awakening, had a lot of problems, including player targeting and physical impossibilities, but was thankfully mostly free of the sexual problems plaguing the others. Iris made it canon that Barbarian was a slut without the player input, making them sleep with most of their co-workers. And then there was the steampunk campaign. Psychic was constantly harassed from multiple sides throughout the campaign, mostly by a mind-altering mage named Clementine, who nearly half the party was forced to be attracted to by the time the campaign ended. One of us even joking about considering having their character cheat with her. Anyways, lots of things happen and Psychic and Clementine agree to a deal where they pretend to be dating to gain access to each other's resources. They would hold hands and kiss each other on the cheek to convince others. Well, this all culminated in Clementine arriving at the party's base to take Psychic on a date so they can get the ball rolling. This backfired when Fighter followed them stealthily and then continued following them. And as Clementine and Psychic entered a warehouse and went to the windowed office instead of having them, close the blinds to block out onlookers, Iris announced that to be convincing, Clementine and Psychic have sex on the couch in the warehouse office for literally no reason. Psychic, who is rather a non-confrontational person usually, stated that her character is absolutely not interested in Clementine, and that she had been terrorized by Clementine's past harassment. The campaign ended before we could see any more down that storyline. Probably for the best. Oh, and Iris ignored our fade to black rule and ruled that Fighter saw everything from a nearby rooftop. Rogue and I decided to have a shared backstory. I would play a gunslinger who loved tinkering, was socially anxious, and was secretly sneaking off to meet her monster girlfriend. Normal things. Rogue, on the other hand, played, as she calls her, a Barbie barbarian. Rogue's character was big, strong, angry, and definitely not interested in girls. No siree. No queerness here. The thing that linked our characters together was that we were both engaged to one set of extremely controlling twin brothers. Rich humans who had risen rapidly through the ranks of the nobility. Rogue and I went into a lot of detail fleshing out the twins, as confronting them would eventually be our characters' personal caps, most likely for the campaign. We were extremely clear with what we wanted when we spoke to Iris. Rogue's fiancé could be a cold fixer, a man obsessed with finding broken things and making them work the way he wanted. In this particular case, the thing the brother, who I'll call Taser, had decided he wanted to fix was Rogue's character. She was angry, violent, aggressive. He wanted to make her placid and obedient. Taser had no interest in Rogue physically, Rogue told Iris, just changing her behavior. Iris apparently didn't hear that part. On the other end of the stick, we had my character's fiancé, who she was forcibly engaged to after being caught with her girlfriend, who was disguised as a maid at the time. This man, who we'll call Hypno, enjoyed cruelty and inflicting fear, and had no interest in fixing my character, just scaring her into obeying him. He used mind control to make anyone my character asked for help forget her plea, and threatened all their lives if she didn't stop throwing a fuss. Hypno enjoyed inflicting pain and fear and nothing else, I told Iris. Apparently, Iris didn't hear that part. During a session, Rogue found herself in Taser's home, having a dinner with her fiancé where they discussed the future, and he talked about his plans to deal with her anger, which included medication. Apparently, he went ahead and had some made and slipped into Rogue's food, and on a failed con save, Rogue temporarily lost the ability to rage. She panicked, the situation escalated, and when Rogue attacked Taser, he calmly pulled out his stun gun and knocked her unconscious, all while staying cold and collected, exactly as we were hoping for. So at the moment, everything for Rogue seemed bleak and good. It was going to feel so wonderful to smash this guy into the ground at the end of the campaign. Iris informed Rogue that she would later wake up in the guest bed. Okay, said Rogue, thinking the dude had obviously had her change to her night clothes. I grabbed my clothes and get dressed and...
Oh, good. I'm glad I didn't have to say it,
Iris said. There was a pause as we mulled over what they had just said. The tone, the context, everything else all added up to one thing, which Iris would later confirm, and definitely went against all our rules. This was something that Rogue never had the chance to discuss or consent to. Iris had Taser assault Rogue's character while she was asleep. That line about
not having to say it
still makes Rogue shiver. A serious breach of trust. In a further breach that would display that not only did Iris not listen to our breakdowns of our villains, but also that they had no respect for our consent nor our ideas, Iris later revealed the motivation that they had given the twins.
They were true vampires, and they wanted to use your characters as broodmares to pass down their bloodline.
Please keep in mind, Iris added this to these characters, but said that the original version of Hypno I asked for, who was slightly handsy, like touching her thigh at their engagement dinner and such, was far too far. And if I ever told anyone that I had wanted the character to be a bit of a handsy jackass, that Iris would kick me from the campaign on the spot. So, you know, double standards. TLDR. DM makes rules against forced sexual content. Forces lots of sexual content. Sex in game always happens if it's the DM's idea, but never happens if it's the player's idea. Okay, so I got two pet theories here about what's going on with Iris. Theory 1 is that she's an asset sent by the asexual industrial complex in order to convert as many people as possible to asexuality by exposing them to a litany of horrors that having impure thoughts can bring about. And theory 2 is that this chick is a literal Slanesh cultist who wants to turn her D&D sessions into rituals of hedonism that will eventually split open the fabric of reality and release chaos demons upon the world before it dies in fiery exterminatus. Don't worry, I got my bolter oiled up and ready to go for either scenario.
Oh, I'm glad I didn't have to say it.
Oh, so you're comfortable putting a subject matter like the Harry Potter version of a roofie in your game, but saying it out loud makes your widow tummy start tying in knots? Oh, you poor creature. How about next time you just don't even do the thing, huh? Would that ease your pain, Iris? Because it would sure as hell ease mine. If you're gonna be a degenerate loser, at least own up to being a degenerate loser. Don't half-ass it with this pseudo-apologetic bullshit. Congrats, Iris. Not only are you a filthy pervert, but you're also a filthy pervert and a filthy liar. You should run for office. I hear Canada just freed up a pretty big position. I'ma be real, by now I would have dipped to the other side of the solar system instead of sticking around in this travesty of a game. If I knew that my DM had this kind of relationship with sex and sexual themes, I'd at the very least insist on bringing my own drinks to the session. But I also understand that these stories are mostly hindsight, boiling frog analogy and whatnot. But in order for that metaphor to be applicable, the water's gotta heat up slowly, and I'm gonna keep it real with you, Chief. This water is feeling pretty f***ing toasty, and we got 7 parts left. Part 3 is titled The Ballad of Iris. Your free time is mine. So recently I posted some of the horror stories about a former DM of my player group, and it really didn't cover even a small portion of the horror that Iris inflicted upon us. And as some people asked for more details, the group got together to decide what to make a big post of next. In the meantime, please enjoy, or suffer through, the uncurated selection of small to major problems caused by Iris that aren't worth their own post. And yes, we know we should have left sooner. Iris would call us constantly. They knew our schedule and would call us on Discord at any point they thought we were even remotely likely to be online. On my lunch break? Oh, it's an incoming call. I should be getting off work? Incoming call. You came online for 30 seconds? Call. You just ended a call with Iris? Call. Every single day, every single player. The only way to stop Iris from calling you was to either bluntly say, "Stop calling me," or to put yourself offline on Discord and refuse to answer any incoming calls. Being offline was still not enough in some cases, as Iris did not care, even if they knew you were at work. Some of the players tried going into Do Not Disturb mode only to find Iris would call anyways. Some of the players, like myself, nearly always answered, because I'm dumb. And others figured out they needed to avoid these calls at all costs to keep their sanity. Iris only worked 8 hours a week, and calling us was basically their hobby. Iris publicly accused Psychic, my amazing friend and sorcerer player, of
not being dedicated enough to the group
because they didn't join a call once due to needing to work on homework for their bachelor's degree. Iris publicly talked about possibly kicking players who had been in the group for months because they missed one session. Iris threw a massive and public hissy fit when we suggested that we postpone a boss fight session due to Ranger, our only healer in that campaign, needing to miss the session. This suggestion was made because the boss was, as Iris put it,
a CR40 homebrew monster
that had roughly 1,000 health and would automatically cast power word kill. We were level 10. Iris threatened to withhold a level up for the group if my character didn't out herself and her entire backstory 5 sessions into a campaign. The character's identity was the only secret she had, and another character's backstory had already been forcibly outed in the same session. She constantly spoiled upcoming characters, fights, etc. to a party member who did not want to hear it and said as much. She attempted to spoil other party members as well. When I launched my very first campaign, I invited Iris, informing them that it was a serious campaign, so please bring a serious character. They brought in the jokiest nerd with a lisp I have ever heard and interrupted everyone until they rage quit. Their character immediately latched on to a character of the player that they had a crush on. It was very awkward. There are several posts worth of creepy behavior from Iris towards Rogue, but we'll post those later. Later, when Iris made a new character for my campaign and rejoined, they noped out before their first session as that character, and then constantly jumped in and out of the call throughout the session, irritating everyone and sometimes just making random noises. This forced us to make a new server Iris couldn't access just for that campaign. Iris would declare a start time, and if everyone showed up early, Iris would immediately start the game without asking anyone, even if it was 30 minutes until game time. Due to this, multiple players started joining calls only at the last minute, as this was disrespectful and took away our table talk time. Iris would ping specific players constantly in the lead up to a session, even if the player had already told them that they would be there in a minute. Iris did not ask people if they were ready to start. Iris told all of us not to tell anyone else if we were going to miss a session, only them. This led to at least once where those who showed up were blindsided when the session was canceled due to having too few players right at start time. If anyone was late and did not tell Iris, they would cancel the session immediately at start time. If 2 players would miss or be late, the session would be canceled, even if they messaged Iris that they were 5 minutes from their house. They were literally 2 minutes late, or if they were in the restroom and would be right there. The only exception was if Iris wanted to play without a certain player. Iris would do random time skips in-game without giving players a chance to object. Iris would hold votes, where all the votes were public in an attempt to shame anyone who voted red on whatever Iris wanted to do. Iris would get upset if people didn't vote within an hour of the post being made, even if it was posted in the middle of the night. We have players all around the world and in different time zones. Iris would mess with players' character sheets in the middle of a session, deleting items and abilities from people's sheets because she suddenly decided the ability was overpowered. They also forced one player to play a champion fighters in every campaign, and then deleted their abilities in the middle of the session, as well as characters Iris themselves made. Iris kept trying to make short rests a whole day and long rests a week without changing encounter rate, or would sometimes try to make classes that get short rest abilities have triple the resources. We would have a nightmare story about that, and Rogue in particular. She required us to use ridiculous encumbrance rules that made 5 books weigh the same as a large barrel filled with ale. This led to a sorcerer who could only carry 3 books in the toolkit and a barbarian who could carry 10 barrels of ale, somehow. Iris would get incredibly upset if any player had any small noise come through their mic while Iris was talking, or if any player was at any time away from their seat when Iris randomly decided to throw a fight at us. Keep in mind we all play over Discord. This was incredibly hypocritical considering Iris started taking walks in the middle of the session, sometimes for the entire duration of a session, even if they knew we had important combat at the start. During these walks, Iris would go to the grocery store, spend enormous amounts of time shopping, spend time standing next to very loud beeping objects that were placed all over their hometown without ever muting themselves, and starting conversations with bystanders that would sometimes last for multiple minutes without muting, halting our roleplay. Nearly every walk, the call would be interrupted by Iris yelling out,
"Oh, hey there, champ!"
because they saw a dog that lived on the route they would always walk. The worst part was that Iris decided that in order to better facilitate these walks, all combat would become theater of the mind. This was especially bad because Iris has the absolute worst sense of distance I have ever heard of. Sometimes thinking a small shop should be randomly over 120 feet wide. Sometimes calling 30 feet too far to see. And sometimes saying that 60 feet of blind sight isn't large enough to see the second floor of a regular store. At one point, a major pub of an inn the party frequented, which was supposedly at the center of the world's largest city, was declared too small to host more than 20 people. Iris would randomly add new players at the start of the session without telling anyone they were doing so. Then Iris would kick them just as suddenly because of various reasons. This happened so often that we had a player get burnt out because of it, and we had to hold an intervention to get them to stop because it happened almost weekly. Thanks for reading. There will be more. A lot more. Yes, I know, we're dumb for tolerating all this for so long. Well, at least you're self-aware enough to admit it. Now, before I hear people commenting about how our OP is an insane masochist or a creative writer farming for Reddit karma, I want to remind everyone that this is just the highlight reel. The sub is called RPGhorrorstories, not RPG tell us about your favorite parts of your year-long campaign followed by only one specific event that caused your entire group to explode and everyone to clap. OP even mentions in the comments section that there was a lot of good that was going on in the background to disguise all the bad that happened to slip through. Add in a special cocktail of pity for the villain, subtle manipulation, and a desperate need for companionship, and you got a recipe for an RPG horror story saga. So I feel like I can't judge our OP too harshly. Note how I said too harshly and not at all. That being said, I think we can all agree that Iris is in the running for one of the worst human beings ever to exist. Yeah, I know there are people who have slaughtered millions and salted the earth so nothing can grow afterwards, but this DM went on walks during the session. That's gotta violate something in the Geneva Conventions. Okay, so that was a lot of different crimes spanning a lot of different genres of shenanigans, so I'm gonna go ahead and go through the list and address the 3 ones that I actually have something to say about. Let's talk about outing D&D character backstories. Oh boy, that is a rough time, friendo. Believe it or not, but D&D spoilers are absolutely a thing. They just work differently from what you'd encounter for a movie or a video game. What most people don't realize is that your backstory really only needs to be known in its entirety to one person, and that's the DM. Some of the most fun I've had playing D&D is working with my DM to set up big reveals that just utterly mind the other players. Oh, that army that's coming to invade the nation. I gave them the information to do so when I was a spy employed by the evil empire. Oh, the big bad evil guy? I'm his dad. Oh, that rumbling sound? I got a demon living in me that will eat all of your souls if I don't eat exactly 17 Sour Patch Kids a day. Oh, that hotel? Trivago. You all get the idea, but what fucking blows is when your DM decides that they're gonna do the opposite of choosing to work with you and throws the big reveal right off a cliff. Often it's not intentional, but it doesn't change the fact that it feels like a conscious undermining of your enjoyment as a player. This can easily be avoided just by asking your players what specifically they want to keep under wraps, and maybe come up with some ideas together on how you can tease it out. Next, let's talk about the very first thing that OP brought up, the constant calling. You know me, I'm a certified Gen Z OG, so phone calls start to drain the soul from my body if they last longer than 45 seconds. I can only imagine what a nightmare that having my Discord chime ringing at all hours of the day and night would bring upon my fragile little world. But honestly, I can't imagine that Iris has a lot of people in her life, so the constant calls are probably a symptom of that, which I imagine feeds into the cycle of pity that I mentioned earlier. I'm gonna go ahead and mark this as yet another point on my growing list of reasons why the flip phone should make a comeback since it can't use Discord. Finally, we arrive to Iris's cute little habit of playing the distracted DM game. I mostly DM, so I understand the frustrations that come with a player being distracted, and even more so when they bring their distractions into the game to try to distract everyone else. Now, despite appearances, I'm a pretty patient guy, but let me tell you, my patience would get launched into the sun if it was the DM playing the distraction game. My God. If I had to hear my DM literally exploring their city while I was trying to play a game of D&D, I wouldn't even be mad, I would be gone. I literally cannot fathom a more blunt way of saying, I do not value you or your time, other than saying, I do not value you or your time. I'm gonna die one day. Hopefully hopefully in a blaze of glory saving the earth or something, but knowing me, it's probably because I walked in front of a bus while playing Slay the Spire on my smartphone. But until that happens, why would I even waste a millisecond of my time trying to muscle through a pseudo session like this?
Oh, but Iris would kick you out. She really, really wants to do that to people.
Good. Please kick me. Please kick me in the head so hard that I get brain damage and I'm spared from this abysmal dog shit. Part 4 is titled The Ballad of Iris. Not so gentle repose. Hey there, us again, this time with a story about how my group's former DM, who we will call Iris, railroaded the party into a boss fight, promised us that it was winnable, and then killed the barbarian in 2 rounds. So there's more to this story that isn't quite mine to tell. A party member's working on writing that, but the important lead up to the death of our furry friend is as follows. The group consisting of me playing a sorcerer, our psychic, barbarian, rogue, bard, and ranger, all went to a tavern filled with criminals seeking Psychic's father, who we had been told by Psychic's aunt was being held captive there. In the first session involving the tavern, our level 4 party had to fight off around 15 bandits when they ambushed us, leaving us with very few resources for what came next. We went upstairs and found several cages hanging from a high ceiling above us, around 40 feet up. We couldn't identify which cage contained Psychic's father, as they had never met him and there were dozens of people in each cage. We searched around a bit and Bard found a series of levers and couldn't identify which controlled which, so we just pulled one at random. Instead of a cage coming down or a trap going off, this summoned an angel, and the session ended with him staring us down. The next session rolls around and we get a bit of context that apparently the thieves on the first floor were extremely incompetent and had been relying on the blessings of the angel, who they had bound to a lever for some reason, to not get caught. Rogue recognized what the angel was, and the angel proceeded to try and get Rogue to accept some sort of deal. In the process, the angel outed himself as a manifestation of thievery, and my character, who was a naive goody-goody, called down the stairs to the guards below that, hey, there's another thief up here. This resulted in the angel throwing a hissy fit and immediately starting a boss fight. I cannot stress enough for context here that Iris swore up and down leading up to this encounter that this was a winnable boss fight. In their words,
It's about 50-50.
we literally had no choice but to come here. Iris was rather a fan of railroading. Regardless of this promise of a fair fight, the first round opens up with the angel summoning 6 ghostly jellyfish out of the mouths of the people in the cages. We quickly discover that they do range psychic damage and average around 10 damage a turn, while refusing to come anywhere close to us, and allowing the melee fighters to target them. The only party members who were able to use ranged attacks at that point after the previous fight were my character with 1 second level spell left, and the ranger with her arrows. To make this worse, Bard, who instigated the encounter, had to miss the session, and instead of lowering the fight difficulty or playing the Bard for the fight, Iris ruled Bard fell unconscious at the start of the fight. Additionally, Iris and I had built up a custom culture for my character's species, which viewed jellyfish as a manifestation of the soul, meaning she was completely unwilling to harm the manifestations because she assumed, and I was told I would need my whole action to figure out if this was true, that the jellyfish were the prisoner's souls. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Iris had created Psychic's spell list and only gave Psychic a single weak attack cantrip. The fight starts and the angel either went first or second and immediately used some ability to steal Ranger's ranged attack skills. Then when Psychic attacked Angel, Angel was resistant to psychic damage. This was immediately followed up by my character's guiding bolt doing resisted radiant damage. Then all the jellyfish used ranged attacks on Barbarian, bringing him to low health. 2 guards rush up the stairs, the jellyfish kill him instantly. Then 6 additional jellyfish spawned. Rogue used their first turn to try and convince the angel to let them take the deal and stop combat, to which the angel responded,
She called the guards.
I cannot through text do justice to the screechy high-pitched voice. One of us rolled and saw the angel was basically undamaged after taking attacks from the entire party, minus Rogue and the unconscious Bard. In the second round, Barbarian immediately goes down to more jellyfish attacks, and then they continued to attack him until he was dead without any saves. Once again, we were level 4 and now facing an angel and 12 basically untouchable ghost jellies with more on the way. With Barbarian down, the angel turned his sights to Ranger next. Trying to salvage something from the situation, I used Shatter on the floor below Barbarian, dropping his body and a couple party members to the first floor so they could bolt. Then had my character dash down the stairs. The angel and the jellies pursued, but we managed to escape, passing the saves to bring Barbarian's corpse with us. What followed next was some truly gorgeous roleplay from the party. Some of them lashing out at my character for provoking the angel. Some of them simply grieving for our sweetheart lean-in barbarian as he asked with his dying breath if he had managed to protect us. And my character running off at full tilt, desperately trying to find someone to bring him back as she did not yet have Revivify. Eventually, Rogue and I made a deal with an enchanter for a scroll of raised dead, which became its own series of horror stories, which I will post later, I'm sure. And we sat and mourned with brilliant roleplay on my friend's part as we waited for the scroll. The death of the barbarian also revealed to my naive divine soul that she had been scammed. She had purchased, using her entire savings, 12 ribbons of immortality, which she credited to saving her life in her introduction session. She and the barbarian had quickly become close friends, and she had given him a ribbon to protect him. Her learning the truth was devastating for her, and is something barbarian brings up fondly still. Along the way, the party reached out to my old character, who the barbarian was close to, and she came to give her condolences, a gift for his awakening, and to cast Gentle Repose to help him in whatever way she could. This was immediately punished by the DM. Instead of Gentle Repose merely preventing the dispersal of Barbarian's soul and his body from rotting, Iris pulled Barbarian into a private call where they explained in explicit detail how, in their setting, Gentle Repose causes constant extreme torture to the soul of the body it is cast on, as it's prevented from joining the cycle of underworld torture instead. Iris suddenly retconned the torturous underworld to be much nicer than Gentle Repose, the spell with gentle in the name. Thankfully, Iris allowed me to take the spell back after all that was said, and Barbarian's player came back explaining the torture. But honestly, it just felt like punishment for trying to do something nice in character. This would later become a common theme. Regardless of the context around it, the roleplay around Barbarian's death is still one of our favorite things we've been through as a group. Unfortunately, much of the love of that whole moment was thrown out the gosh darned window when Iris decided to make it that the mission that had brought us there was actually fake, as Psychic's real dad was the living embodiment of imagination, and had cooked up the whole quest as a way to introduce himself. We are completely certain Iris retconned this into existence several sessions after the tavern incident because a couple of us had chatted after the game that Psychic's family seemed kinda one-note and unreliable. Iris also used this in-game retcon to beam absolute certainty into Psychic's head that their mom was the big bad evil guy. And then, not 30 seconds later, Iris changed their mind and said, never mind, you aren't certain. By the way, if anyone is curious, Iris showed us the boss fight sheet. I did the math, and the fight was statistically unwinnable, even if Bard had been conscious. Additionally, Iris later revealed that they had accidentally used a slightly stronger version of the jellyfish than the version they had showed us. TLDR, TM kills off a PC in a railroaded, unwinnable boss fight that they swore was winnable, then invalidates the whole thing with a "it was all a dream" reveal, when we didn't like a character while still leaving the character death in. Yes, I know, we're stupid. Look, I'm all for grim darken it up from time to time. My go-to franchises include things like Warhammer 40k, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Berserk. So you can imagine that I like my stories to be populated with characters that are overall just having a real bad time. I don't even think the idea of Gentle Repose creating an inescapable hell as a trade-off for a possible revive is a bad idea. But I understand that my tastes are not going to be for everyone, something that Iris clearly does not. I got zero problems turning the flavoring of a lot of D&D's spells and themes away from The Hobbit and more towards the old world of Warhammer Fantasy. But you can't just go change shit on a whim, and that goes double if it's making feel-good stuff into miserable stuff. And that goes times 40 if it's directly interfering with player agency. Obviously, ROP's intention was not to literally condemn the barbarian soul to an eternity of damnation and torture. In fact, you'd have to be a drooling idiot to not understand it was the exact opposite. So that means now is not the time to turn up the edge, bozo. Iris implements last-minute retcons and story beats like modern Hollywood writes movies, for the purpose of subverting expectations, no matter how little it makes sense or how much the audience loathes it. Look, Iris, my gal, my festering little imploding mass of degeneracy and control issues. You cannot run games like this and expect players to give a damn about what happens. If you establish that there are no stakes and literally everything they do or that happens to your players is bullshit from the start or can be retconned away at a thought, why would your players give a flying talk about the world you've built. If you were to go to sleep one day knowing that everything you've said, done, or thought about will be deleted from existence on the whim of an incompetent god the very next morning, eventually you'd start asking yourself, why would you want to do anything? I'd probably do nothing but sit in my bed eating flavor-blasted goldfish and donuts while replaying Elden Ring for the 14th time. At least then I wouldn't have to worry about getting fat. Part 5 is titled The Ballad of Iris, Betrayal Mountain, Part 1. Hello and welcome back to yet another installment of the tragic story of my party's interactions with our former DM, who we will call Iris. We're still working our way through some of the larger problems, but for now, let's talk about some of the in and out of game betrayals, and small ridiculous things that Iris did. Some of these are the in-game kind, an NPC suddenly turning evil out of nowhere, plot twists that make less than 0 sense, the classic stab in the back, but most of these betrayals are aimed at the wonderful group I play with. Betrayals of our trust. I will refer to all other players as the class they were playing in the first game I joined the group in, regardless of the actual class at any given time. This was originally going to be 2 posts, but we already have 8 pages typed out and we aren't done, so buckle up. As always, thanks for reading. We know we're done for tolerating this, and I hope you enjoy our suffering. This story happened shortly before I joined the group, so I am relying on the testimony of 3 of the players who were there. In the high-level prequel campaign to the traditional fantasy one I was brought into the group for, everyone played demigods. The demigod party had been working for a council of people who planned to betray them. Quick aside, Iris loves evil councils, and one of the council members who was traveling with the party, actually her simulacrum, confessed to the planned betrayal, ripped out some of Psychic's hair, and teleported away in a cutscene. Psychic, at the time playing a rogue who was sent by her mother, the goddess of death, ow, the edge, to take out people who had eluded their natural end, tracked down the council with the party. Iris proceeded to egg Psychic on to stab the council member. Considering Psychic was playing an assassin rogue with the ability to cut characters' max HP when they hit, it should have been devastating. Iris encouraged Psychic to sneak away from the party to do said stabbing, and eventually convinced Psychic to do so in a mini-session. Psychic snuck in undetected, did their sneaky stabby, and
Your dagger glances off of her skin.
for whatever reason, Iris made all the councilmen invincible. They had apparently just taken their invulnerability potions, had cast aid on themselves, etc., etc. This was extra dumb because they were all actually simulacrums, so their deaths literally would not have mattered. Psychic, panicking, turns around and tries to bolt out of the room, only to find that there's now an invisible one-way barrier blocking them from leaving. Psychic tries to use the message cantrip to contact the party, who is within visible range. But Iris, who I mentioned in a previous post has no sense of distance, ruled the party was just barely too far away for the cantrip to work. Iris implied that there was no way for Psychic to leave the room, so they had to fight the council's invincible simulacrums and various archers by themselves, and inevitably died. Iris then publicly mocked Psychic for not misty-stepping with a DC roll through the impenetrable barrier. Iris forced all demigods to take levels in Divine Soul. After this sudden inevitable character death and subsequent disintegration, Iris came to Psychic and told them that the hair-ripping council member from before had created a clone of her, and that she would now be playing this evil clone. See Infinite Unsexy post. Controlled by the council. Psychic was to lead the party into a trap and betray them in the same room where their original character had died. Their order was to stab the first party member they could when the fight broke out. Psychic did the stabbing, and just as she was getting excited to get to play this role of betrayer, Iris informed them that they morphed into a generic monster that fought the party. Cue TPK against immortal enemies and monsters, and you would think that the game ends here. It did not. What followed this was a deal with the goddess of evil, several boss fights, a whole bunch more simulacrums, a second deal with the goddess of evil, look forward to that future post, some depressing roleplay, and a boss fight with the god of destruction while the zombie apocalypse happens in the background. Cue one disintegration and resurrection of Rogue later, Psychic is told that she has to obey her deal with the goddess of evil and run off and go do stabbery. Bard, a crazy multi-class at the time, has sworn in-game to protect Psychic's character and goes to follow her to the ends of the earth. Iris didn't like this, as it would interfere with their future plans. So at the start of the epilogue, Iris rules Bard turns to dust because Iris said so. Rogue's character swears to hunt Psychic down and not rest until she succeeds. Iris instantly cuts to decades later, tosses a romantic interest at Rogue, and declares that by the start of the next campaign, she would drop from level 20 to level 12. even though Rogue's player said that she would keep training and hunting Psychic forever until she was put out of her misery. In contrast, we have Psychic's updated boss fight character sheet. Brace yourselves before reading onward. Psychic's former character turned goddess of evil minion would be tortured for centuries and then given a passive stealth of 40, an automatic hit that deals a guaranteed 170 damage with no save against anything she hit while stealth. Oh, and anything she killed was permanently unrevivable as long as she was not erased from existence. On top of this, the former edgy assassin literally could not die as long as the goddess of evil existed. Shadow the Hedgehog had literally nothing on this character. This is the Cliff Notes version of this story, as I wasn't there and don't have incredible saint-like patience required to explain the rest of that chaos. Iris told the players that they didn't have to keep track of travel items on their character sheet, such as tents, bedrolls, rations, etc. Iris constantly checked our character sheets and would sometimes punish players for not having those items.
You don't have a tent on your sheet. You have to sleep outside. And because you're sleeping on the ground, your clothes become damaged over time.
Because clothes were ripped because of this, NPCs would instantly know that characters weren't local or they would stand out. Iris insisted we carefully track the inventory space of every item. A character who brought a tent and a bedroll might not be able to carry anything else if their strength was a 6 or so. Notably, my character was only able to bring a single dagger, a ring, a notebook, her clothes, and 1 flask. She originally had 2 daggers, but was not strong enough to carry both. Ranger asked for a bag of holding in-game after being with the group for a while already, as their new character was a potion maker and carried tons of bottles and such in a game where Iris told everyone they could have 1 magical item to start. Iris told Ranger that they absolutely could not have a bag of holding. One session later, a new player was added to the group without Iris asking or informing anyone. Iris gave the new player a bag of holding, which Ranger found out in-game when the new player offered to store all the party's junk in their new bag. I have a background that involves writing and altering legal contracts. I no longer perform those duties, but I remember a lot of it. Iris, upon finding this out, requested that I help them create a legally binding magical contract with airtight terms. This was their way of introducing a magic auction to the game, and I spent several hours writing a contract with them that covered all of their bases and sounded sufficiently spooky enough. It wasn't a huge amount of effort, but I still feel a bit miffed that Iris decided not to ever use the contract again a few sessions later when I pointed out logical and grammatical loopholes that the party could potentially use to get out of the contract, if they ever found the right patron to help them. As Iris had already put the contract in one of the campaigns they were running instead of retconning it away, they drastically increased the prices of all items in the auction to fuck over the player who signed the contract, making even simple items cost more than our characters were allowed to carry, and more than they ever found in-game combined. All while the player character had to permanently continue paying their auction subscription. I don't know where else to add this, so I'm gonna go ahead and say that Iris also insisted that their gold coins weighed 5 pounds each in-game until we revolted against that. The second campaign I joined after Iris recruited me was an ongoing one set in a dark fairy tale inspired setting reminiscent of Curse of Strahd, in that nobody could leave the area as long as the BBEG, Nelby, was alive. The party members talked with Iris about their characters and subclasses prior to the start of the campaign. Iris did nothing to discourage or warn them from taking necrotic damage options as their main focus, even encouraging one party member to play a necrotic-focused Dampier Warlock. Only in the second session of the campaign did Iris reveal that essentially every enemy in the entire campaign was immune or resistant to necrotic, as Nelby, her council, her soldiers, and just about everything else was undead. Iris did not allow takesies backsies after revealing this. Iris did eventually allow Barbarian, at the time a Phantom Rogue, to swap to a Blood Hunter subclass that was Warlock-ish, after taking my character's grandma as a patron. There's a lot of context I need to add here, so please bear with me. By the time I joined this campaign, the party had defeated another party at the same level and allied with them in-game to take down the council. They had agreed to set out to find an associate of Bard's character to help them track down the Undead Destroyer.exe, a MacGuffin weapon that was the only thing that could permanently kill undead in this setting, supposedly. When I was invited to the game, I decided to make a reverse Red Riding Hood. Scarlet was raised by wolves who attacked an old lady at her cabin only for the old lady to pull out a woodsman's axe and turn Scarlet into an orphan for the second time before adopting her. Grandma, as a character, could not have possibly existed before that session. The party had never heard of her because she did not exist. Scarlet wakes up to find Grandma gone, goes searching, and runs into the party, who immediately latch on to this extremely dangerous axe-wielding child of destruction. Scarlet joins the party. They go to search for Bard's associate. It's Grandma. Grandma and her second secret family 600 miles away. Okay. Grandma forced the party to sign a magic contract saying they won't ever try to hurt her in exchange for her helping Barbarian with his backstory illness that wiped out his family. She then forced us to fight a supremely powerful angel that we only beat because Iris misread the character sheet and signed the contract. As Grandma goes to put Barbarian in a cocoon and change his class, she reveals that she caused the illness, the one that wiped out his family. Oh, she then revealed that she killed Ranger's entire village too, claiming Ranger's backstory as well. Oh, and Psychic's ex, who killed everyone in her village, that was Grandma too. Grandma puppeteered everyone except Rogue's backstory to get them here in Zombieland to kill Nelby. Turns out, that was a lie, but I'll save that for the final Iris story. The party can't Grandma anymore, so we fuck off and go visit Bard's family after getting the MacGuffin. And Iris has completely changed his backstory too. Instead of the loving family Bard had written for himself, he now had an abusive alcoholic mother, a careless father, and a bunch of dead asshole siblings. Because they got turned into zombies off screen. Yay! Iris said nothing short of a wish spell could undo this. As the final betrayal I'll bring up from that campaign, you know how I mentioned the party allied with an equally strong group of adventurers earlier on? We had to get Rogue's mother's heart to cure them of a curse. You would think two parties working together would make a fight against a vampire mommy easier as a reward for managing to befriend a group of enemies the party was supposed to kill. Nope, Iris ruled the original version of Vampire Mommy wasn't a good fight anymore and made a custom CR40 monster that could automatically fully heal 3 times, gaining new attacks each time, could cast Power Word Kill, would summon a bunch of mobs automatically, and could take a free second turn as a mythical creature each round. They also automatically used a reaction to attack any healing characters mid-fight. On top of what I just described, they had about 15 other abilities and made a minimum of 5 attacks a turn, all on top of the fight having a time limit before the guards showed up to help her. Yay, we won. But I am really not proud of how much bullshit we had to do to claim that victory. Rogue said it. At the start of this campaign, Rogue gave themselves a single friend in their backstory. Their butler, who was unendingly loyal to her as well as being her father figure. This was a feature of her noble background. Iris made sure to kill off the butler in an off-screen cutscene in the second session. Wow, every one of these parts feels like you're standing under a dump truck emptying a load of manure onto your head. And even though it's enough to drown a man, it's all shit. And you really don't need a second opinion to let you know that it's all shit. But there is a recurring problem in these stories that I think I can use as a springboard to offer some good DM advice. I'm sensing a recurring pattern here that implies Iris likes her ungodly, irritating CR40 monsters. For reference, the highest CR monster in the Vanilla Monster Manual is the Tarrasque, and that's only CR 30. Now, this has gotta be like the 14th CR 40 monster we've encountered in this saga. I don't know the real number, and I'm not gonna go back to count. Bite my ass. Now, I won't lie, a good homebrewed monster can be a good time. Hell, even an unbeatable god monster can be woven into the story for a good time. The problems come about when everything is an unbeatable god monster. Sometimes I just want to make a new soft spot in a squishy guy's head without any fear of retaliation. Does that make me a bad person? Yes, but it also makes me right. Funnily enough, having everything in your world be god tier is a terrible way to establish danger in your player's minds. Because why should I be afraid of the literal god of destruction who can one-shot me with just a thought, when the bandit chief I faced at level 3 could do the same thing? Perceived threat is much different than actual threat, which is something that anyone who's done jujitsu with Demetrius Johnson will tell you. I would argue that perceived threat is much more important in the context of an RPG, because RPGs rely a lot more on vibes to get ideas across. In an RPG, you can only really establish how much of a threat something or someone is relative to how they exist in their world. If I've been painting the walls with my enemy's insides for the past few sessions, and then all of a sudden there's a guy who puts my head through a table, you can bet that I'm gonna be thinking twice before messing with that guy. Of course, Iris is guilty of much, much, much worse things than poor counterbalance, but I'd like to refer you to my disclaimer from earlier. I feel like you don't really need me to tackle those, because if you're out here rewriting players' backstories on a whim to facilitate your grandma to god pipeline, then there's some bigger problems there. That's getting held back in first grade at the DM Academy status there, Chief. Part 6 is titled The Ballad of Iris, Betrayal Mountain Part 2. The first campaign after I joined the group opened in a pretty magnificent manner. The party was forced together to confront the reality of a giant robot man who wanted to inflict the AI socialist revolution upon a medieval world. Honestly, nice opening, Iris. The relevant characters are my cleric, the changeling rogue, and psychic. Before the start of the campaign, Iris, psychic, and rogue had all agreed to the idea of building towards an in-character romance between their latter two. By the end of session 2, everyone but Iris realized that that plan was dead, as Rogue hated Psychic, and Psychic wasn't particularly fond of Rogue. Sometimes characters come out differently in-game than they do on paper. Oh well. Cut to a few sessions later, and my cleric and rogue had a nice little side moment after we were pulled into a private call where my character, who was a doctor, figured out that rogue was a changeling. Honestly, the reveal was a little forced by Iris, but it did have a nice moment where my cleric and rogue walked away trusting each other a bit more, and rogue was even smiling. I thought it would be funny if Iris mentioned that rogue comes back looking satisfied and more relaxed around my cleric after the call. But Iris ixtayed that because they were still hoping their rogue/psychic ship would sail. No huge loss, but the ship was already chilling with Poseidon. 4 sessions into the campaign, the party encountered a soldier who was acting strangely and attacked the party out of nowhere, lunging forward and getting violent. We were forced to fight back to protect ourselves and managed to stun him long enough to knock him out and tie him up. My character examined him and used a disease-finding spell, and we found out that he was infected with a new fungal zombie disease. Neat. The first arc of the campaign was shaping up to be the spread of this sapient zombie disease. A bit of roleplay happens, and the party gets surrounded by soldiers who check to make sure they aren't sick. And my character, who is dressed as a noble, is interrogated by the soldiers. Honestly, once again, props to Iris up to this point. I feel I should explain my character at this point. My character was a humanoid doll made by a noble in the distant past to give to his sickly daughter, who few people would willingly approach. Her purpose was to protect and care for this child, Reyna. Reyna led Eska around everywhere. They were never separated. And with the innocence of a child, Reyna started forcing Eska to start making decisions. What's your favorite flower? What book is your favorite? Do you like this one or this one better? Reyna always forced the doll to make a choice, and gradually over time, this caused the doll to come to life, growing a soul. Without spelling out all the intermediary backstory, eventually the doll cured Reyna, and Reyna grew to become an adult and fell in love with an inventor. This inventor's name was Cecil. The giant robot I mentioned earlier? That was Cecil. Or rather, what was left of him. Cecil knew everything about the doll, Eska. He knew that she was intelligent, did not need to rest, and was the most skilled medic in the history of the kingdom, knowing more about medicine than literally anyone else. Cecil, who was shaping up to be a major big bad evil guy who wanted to eliminate work in the country in exchange for nearly all metal resources, had created an entire army of robots and led them far to the north, but not before leaving Eska with a ring that would allow them to talk to each other for 10 minutes a week. Knowing Cecil will definitely want to do something about the new zombie fungus plague that was being revealed, I had Eska contact Cecil. Eska was going to travel to the capital and begin work on a cure. She already had samples, and I had rolled extremely high on my medicine checks to figure out the basis of a fungal vaccine, with Iris telling me that Eska 100% had the know-how to make a cure. Eska asked that Cecil be prepared to distribute the cure once she was done making it, and to give her at least a week before taking any action. Iris said that Cecil agreed. Once again, I would like to mention that Cecil knows Eska is essentially built for this, and he's 1,000 miles north of the capital and can't teleport anyways, right? Fast forward 3 days in game. 1 session since we fought the knight. We arrive at the capital to find the entirety of Cecil's robot army and Cecil himself at the gate. Somehow they all ran across the several rivers straight south around 1,000 miles in the time it took us to travel a little over 100 miles. We arrived just in time to see Cecil blow up the city wall of the capital and send his army in as he turns to Eska.
Why didn't you wait?
I asked.
You told me you'd wait. You agreed.
You were taking too long. I will take the resources in the castle and make the cure and distribute it, the giant robot replies.
You don't even know anything about medicine. Why wouldn't you wait? You know I could have accomplished this.
Humanity could not wait that long. I will brute force a cure, even though it will take far more resources, blah, 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 blah. Cecil then went on a nonsensical monologue and then raised his enormous adamantine hand. Now turn around and leave. There is nothing I can do to you which will not kill you, Eska. Iris reminded me that Cecil, who was essentially a souped-up adamantine golem, did tons of thunder and force damage. I had wanted to give my porcelain doll cleric a bludgeoning weakness, and Iris had initially agreed to that. But around the time Iris made Cecil's boss sheet, they suddenly insisted that they wouldn't allow the bludgeoning weakness, and that I should take force and thunder weaknesses instead. What a complete and total coincidence! Unable to talk any sense into Cecil, Eska gave up, withdrew from the lines, and watched Cecil get his ass kicked regardless, fleeing from the city as various adventurers fought him off, meaning he did this attack with no results. Well, there was one result. Soldiers saw Eska trying to talk Cecil down, and so they arrested the entire party. Eska was forced to reveal her entire backstory to an NPC in a mini-chat, and the NPC agreed not to share her story, for about 5 minutes. The party gets dragged in front of the Queen and her council, which is apparently just one of exactly 6 groups in the entire countrywide Adventurers Guild. Iris kept making the numbers smaller and smaller as the campaign went on. We have no clue other than realism? And we get our first big shock as we find out that Rogue is on the council. Oh wait, that's not Rogue. That's just the original person Rogue had been copying as their changeling form this whole time. It turns out the adventuring party on the council had saved Rogue in their backstory and allowed them to transform into one of them to keep them safe from people hunting them. And then this same adventurer who suggested this didn't warn Rogue or give them a chance to cover up before being dragged into the council. Iris had the Queen go on and on about impersonating a royal advisor and treason and dungeon, etc., etc., before role-playing with themselves for a bit about how it's actually okay because the adventurers said it was. This was just Iris's way of forcing Rogue to reveal them being a changeling to the party. No way to avoid it. No warnings. Kinda annoying, but at least that's all Iris revealed, right? Nope. Please recall that my character, Eska, was a cleric doll who looked like a human. Cecil had kidnapped her centuries before and had locked her away, studying her and learning to make more intelligent constructs like what he had in his army. Beyond that, Eska's entire existence was a secret of her family. She didn't look like a doll, act like one, anything. Only someone who hadn't met her before would know who she was. Well, guess who Iris made the Queen? Yeah, it was Reyna's great-great-great-great-granddaughter, who owned a painting of Eska and shouted out who she was, minus the doll part, immediately as Eska walked into the room. So yeah, that was fun. Roleplay, roleplay, roleplay. The only reason the adventurer who Eska had spilled the beans to didn't say what Eska was to the whole group was because I begged Iris not to in our private call, as Eska's entire character arc was supposed to be her slowly opening up to the party as they got more hints that she wasn't human. When I say hints, I mean I went nuts on this. I had art commissioned of Eska's face cracking and her hiding it with a hand if she ever got crit. I had a family portrait made that would be included both as a painting in her old home in game and in a book about her family. That was supposed to be rare and existed somewhere in the setting. I had been dropping hints that she only ever drank, never ate in front of the party. They would have been able to follow her to find out that she was disposing of the food she gave her and that she only was pretending to drink. She wore gloves and never let anyone touch her or try to pick her up because of how hard and heavy she was. This is just the smallest list of what I had prepped, all with Iris knowing and agreeing to this before her character arc, to dropping very small hints and seeing if anyone could figure it out. Iris and I even agreed that once she had been warming to the party, she could pursue her actual goal of finding Reyna's shield and sword, and then finally her grave. What happened instead? Iris had the party confront Eska, basically forcing them out of character to corner her and interrogate her into confessing who she was. Eska has never told a lie, and so I carefully had her maneuver around her being a doll, instead making it seem like her relationship with the Queen was the big secret she was keeping. The session ended there with me upset, but okay. And then Iris decided to change her mind. I received a message telling me that if Eska didn't tell the party she was a doll, the party would not get their level up. I said no, No. Then Iris said out loud,
If this doesn't happen, there won't be a level up. Everyone wait.
I kinda sat there for a moment, grieving for what I was about to do, and gave in. Iris, all proud of themselves, said,
You all feel as if Eska is still hiding something.
and so the next person pressed, and I had Eska admit everything. All my secrets out the window. Iris was just so proud of themselves, and I just sat there wondering how I could keep playing my character, who I loved so much. Iris then pulled me into a mini chat where the queen showed Eska Reyna's grave and the message she had left for Eska. I was heartbroken. Her secrets, the art I had made, her goal, all done with. 5 sessions into the campaign, I realized I couldn't play her anymore. I went to Iris and asked if Eska could become an NPC. I would make a new character with new goals and a plotline that wasn't important enough that Iris could ruin it. Iris approved the change. Eska did the roles to make the cure for the plague, became an NPC that lived at the castle, and I brought in my dumb shorty. I hoped that the party could stay in touch with Eska, but other than allowing her to show up once to give a flower as a gift and cast gentle repos, see not so gentle repos post, Iris didn't allow Eska to ever show up again, stating that the party would rely on her to solve all their problems. This was said on a meta level anytime any party member in-game talked about wanting to go see Eska, even if they didn't have any problems. As for Cecil, Iris's justification for Cecil not listening to her, betraying her again, and somehow running 1,000 miles in 2 nights? He cracked his soul when he put it in the robot, so he couldn't make smart decisions anymore. I had then been led to believe that Cecil was a BBEG we could negotiate with, but he was just another trap. Another way for Iris to show how superior they were to all our plans and ideas. Side note, Rogue told me as we were typing this out that they think one of the reasons that Iris might have spilled the beans on Eska and forced everything to happen like this was because Iris might have become jealous at how many theories Rogue was making about Eska, and that she wasn't paying as much attention to Iris's cool NPCs and villains. I had put a lot of effort into making Eska come across as cold and aloof, even though she really wanted to be cared for, and was taking care of the party from the background. Iris might not have taken it as well, and I kinda convinced Rogue that Eska was secretly evil. Who could say for sure though? In between the session where forced reveals happened and the next, I realized that I could no longer play my cleric. She had been given the goal of her arc, had all of her secrets forcibly revealed, and in general, I was just in a sour mood when I thought about playing her next session. She had been given everything she could reasonably want, so there was no reason for her to stay in the party. With a heavy heart, I retired my cleric and brought in a revamped version of an old character of mine. With Iris's permission, of course. Enter Parm, the idiot supreme cinnamon roll divine soul who angered an angel in a previous post. Iris had been hyping up that one of the party could take a feat to learn how to enchant in-game if they ever had in-game reasons for doing so, thus providing the party with a persistent source of upgrading, as Iris didn't like having magic items as rewards or loot. I wish to stress the enchanting feat was Iris's idea, not something that any of us asked for. Instead of having my cleric take the feat as originally intended, when I swapped to my idiot supreme, it was agreed that she already had been in the city for several months, learning enchanting from the master enchanter, the fake lich Indigo. Iris waited until after I had taken the feat under the agreement that there were no takesies backsies to reveal that it wasn't enough to have already learned how to enchant and to have the resources and time to do so. My character needed to spend an immense amount of time studying mid-game to make even common items. Obviously, enchanting isn't really a built-in thing as a skill in D&D, so I figured it was well worth it to have a large amount of gold in 2 to 3 days to make a common magical item, with the length of time and resource cost exponentially growing by rarity. What I was not prepared for was Iris informing me my character would have to buy extremely expensive books of various arbitrary categories, and then study to learn to make even the simplest magic item. So if there were 13 categories of books with 5 rarities each, I might have to dedicate 50 gold in 7 days of in-game studying just to learn how to make a cloak of billowing. That is assuming that Iris doesn't randomly decide that the cloak actually falls under multiple types of magic. therefore requiring even more study and gold. This was a campaign where 10 gold was a lot of money. I wish I still had the full requirements written down because they were truly ridiculous. By the time we got around to gaining the capability of making exactly one uncommon magic item, my character would have needed to invest hundreds of gold, dozens of days of study, and an entire feat. Oh, and this is all the while she can only hold 3 books at a time in her inventory, even with her bag of holding, because 5 books takes up the same amount of space as a large barrel, according to Iris. Learning to make and actually making a rare item in-game could easily take up to half a year. Did I mention the final ingredient of studying or enchanting was that Iris said if we were traveling, my character could not spend any time studying or crafting without losing the ability to join in roleplay? This is a roleplay heavy group. Iris literally wanted me to give up roleplay to use the feat they gave me. And they didn't tell me that until after I took the feat. When I protested, they agreed I could roleplay a tiny bit, but they also increased all crafting and studying times. No takesy-backsies. I feel like this is also a good spot to add in that Iris often tried to rule that our characters couldn't get a short rest if they roleplayed, because Iris considered literally anything other than sitting still in silence to be heavy activity. So about that fake lich I mentioned earlier, Indigo was a lich who didn't want to be one anymore, but ran his shop pretending to be a spooky fake lich cosplayer as kind of a theme. He and Parm were established to be good friends, and Indigo was the one who made the Raised Dead scroll from a previous story. We couldn't afford to pay for the scroll outright, so Indigo agreed to exchange the scroll for getting to study Rogue's spell thief abilities for 14 days. This amount of time was supposed to be a pretty good fit, since Rogue was about to miss 2 weeks worth of sessions on a vacation. Iris claims what happened next was the result of them changing their plans because we liked Indigo too much. I'm not convinced that's true, as Iris lied to us constantly in and out of game. Indigo led Rogue to his shop with the promise she'd be back in 2 weeks. Cut to a scene in Indigo's shop, and a lich friend ties Rogue to a table and announces he's selling her to Cecil. Yes, the Cecil from above. We never learned the point of this. Indigo cast the spell to Flawed Simulacrum, a custom version of the spell Iris came up with for reasons we will never fully understand because they did not make sense, and made a fake rogue who he sent back to the party. This was obviously suspicious because 2 weeks were not up, and last we checked, Rogue did not talk like an 80s skateboarder. It was bizarre and kinda funny. We figure out what's going on just in time for Indigo to show up at the door. Indigo has come to check on us and make sure that everything is good and is like, what the fuck is wrong with Rogue? Yeah, so Indigo and the party talk and figure out that one of his flawed simulacrums, he had 12, had gone rogue, no pun intended. So the party destroyed the fake rogue and goes to confront the simulacrum. Along the way, Iris roleplays as Indigo and keeps messing up the voice for Indigo and stops and out of character says,
Sorry guys, I just can't get his accent right tonight.
And we keep going. We get to Indigo's shop, and there's like 8 constructs inside, and we kick their asses. Although I do want to note that Iris claimed this itty-bitty shop was too large for my character to hit a person halfway across the room with a spell of 120 feet range. Nothing major, just a reminder that Iris doesn't know distances. We take down the constructs and head to the back room, where Indigo promptly turns around and smashes the panel on the wall that allows anyone to exit. As it turns out, this is a pocket dimension. Indigo goes on a rant about how he already sold Rogue, and now we are going to die. We beat his ass without using proper attacks in an honestly hilarious moment, as everyone refuses to treat this lich as a proper foe, biting, punching, and smacking with sticks until he turns into snow. Surprise! Yeah, he was a simulacrum too. Iris announces we are locked in, and it will take like 3 days of work for my enchanter to fix the panel. Barbarian, bless his soul, attempted percussive maintenance on the panel, smashing it with a punch. Things rapidly go downhill from there. I'll spare you the worst of it, but Iris declared we were trapped in this featureless, brightly lit room with nothing in it for 14 days, before the real Indigo shows up to save us. Unfortunately, this triggered a panic attack from me in real life, as a suppressed memory of being locked in rooms for long periods of time surfaced. But the idea of our characters only surviving off a ranger's good berries and being completely helpless in a featureless environment was awful. Iris claimed that this was their special way of making us time skip 14 in-game days before we could try and rescue Rogue. Also, Iris mocked us for not realizing the simulacrum Indigo was fake.
I kept changing accent as a hint.
Never mind that they told us out of character that they just couldn't keep the accent straight. Long story short, my panic attack and people protesting the 14 days of confinement led to a retcon, where instead we twiddled our thumbs at home until real Indigo came and told us, "Uh-oh, my simulacrum sold the rogue! Go save them!" Iris's justification for the whole simulacrum thing was that Indigo was evil the whole time and they retconned it because we liked the character. I can't help but think, why did you let my character spend 8 months with him then when she's really good at getting to know people? I don't know. Later on, Iris tried to basically put us in a situation where Indigo would refuse to ever help the party again, and would even refuse to help my character again if they didn't leave the party because Rogue asked for compensation for Indigo's simulacrum having sold them. I am currently running my first D&D campaign. It has been going extremely well if we go by player feedback. The campaign is actually based off a video game I had hoped to make about a decade ago, but gave up on because coding is hard and I'm lazy. This game was going to feature several playable queer characters and lots of choices. At the time I was writing it, there was a lot of people lashing out at wokeness in video games, so I decided to make a second version of the game. This version would have all the queer characters, strong women, and progressiveness taken out, and would be distributed freely as an apology. What I wasn't gonna tell anyone until after launch was not only did I take out the final boss of the game, it pretty much only left muscly men. Enter Chet Manley. Chet was going to be the only protagonist of this wokeless version of the game, and was basically going to be a super supportive, awesome bro type guy. Oh, and this version of the game was going to be extremely, unintentionally homoerotic, as he went around surrounded by nothing but supportive, muscular, and sometimes shirtless men. It was basically my version of a joke. I told Iris about this version of the scrapped game when I was converting the story to be used as a D&D campaign. Unfortunately, I think Iris didn't hear all the supportive, friendly bits of the character. Instead, a couple sessions later, my group shows up in Iris's campaign after joining the Adventurers Guild and finds an absolute ass outside their front door. Iris had asked if they could use Chet as a reference in their own campaign. What Iris did not tell me was that they were going to make him into an insufferable, harassing, sexist incel of a reporter, who Iris would use in-game to stalk and harass the character of the player they had a crush on. Ranger nearly shot the dude, and I don't blame her. He even tried to break into the gay bar mentioned in a previous post to continue harassing the female-presenting party members. I feel like I need to stop writing anything more about Chet at this point, because Rogue is considering strangling me. He only showed up for a little while, but he is seared into our collective consciousness. I will never be able to use him in anything ever. Thanks, Iris. As an aside, this isn't the only incel character Iris added to the campaign of theirs, and every time one showed up, Iris would giggle maniacally out of character at our frustration and disdain towards the characters. At one point, Iris created a literal immortal incel that kept reviving with more power and followed the party as punishment for killing him early on. We only managed to permanently, we think, put him down by dealing a finishing blow with a very specific magic item. Rogue will cover more of those characters in their upcoming post. TLDR, DM hates when players have interesting secrets, characters, roleplay, or lives. Forces reveal of all character secrets because their secrets are cooler. Adds an enchanting feat to a game and punishes player for taking said feat. DM locks PC in a room for 14 days so they can have a time skip, and DM turns a wholesome character into an incel. Apologies, but I didn't exactly shed a tear when you said that your video game never saw the light of day, OP. Spite can be a decent motivator for short-term goals, but overall it's never a replacement for passion. And projects that are made out of spite instead of passion never result in a quality product. So it's really not surprising to me that you lost your motivation to finish it. And for what it's worth, I think you can do better than dedicating your time to a product designed specifically to own the chuds, Lamau. Especially when it's so obvious that a loud minority of people online were able to root themselves so deeply in the decision-making part of your brain. The amount of people who genuinely dislike queer characters or strong women in their media is microscopic compared to the majority of people who just really don't care either way. I mean, hell, Arcane Jane is almost universally beloved, and I don't think I've ever seen any show get more gay. What people actually hate is garbage writing that serves the writers more than it serves the story. And claiming that someone doesn't like a story just because they're, don't like progressiveness is disingenuous at the best of times. Just make what you like and f the opinions of people who aren't going to be useful to your future creative efforts. It really is that simple. And if what you like is an RPG set in the same universe as Brokeback Mountain, well then, I'd get a beer with Chet Manley. Anyways, down to business. Oh my god, Iris! Dude, let me tell you, that first part of the story got my blood boiling. Honestly, I don't even think Iris has just neglect for her players. This seems like active disdain. I really like the character concept for Eska, and seeing it squandered in such a pointless way is really disappointing. Again and again, Iris's control issues plague this group in ways that I can't explain beyond just outright sadism. The fact that she feels so comfortable with repeatedly threatening her players with in-game consequences for not bowing to how she wants the story to go tells me that she fundamentally misunderstands how RPGs work. On another note, I get it. Keeping consistent accents is hard when you choose to do voices as a DM. But you can't say, "Oh man, I can't get this accent right," one day, and then whip out the old, "You fools, you didn't notice I was changing my accent," the next. So, which is it, Iris? Are you a liar who likes to pull random ways to screw us out of your ass, or are you just shit at roleplay and too proud to admit it? Because neither is a good look. Zero exaggeration, Iris has to be the worst problem player we've had on this channel. I mean, sure, she's not a physical threat like some other degenerates, but the sheer quantity of stuff she's able to get away with is insane. This feels like I'm reading the logs of Guantanamo Bay. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Iris started waterboarding someone because she thought it would be quirky. Part 7 is titled The Ballad of Iris, Betrayal Mountain, Part 3. All players are referred to as the class they played in my first campaign with them. Hey there, y'all. Today it's finally time to crest the peak of Betrayal Mountain. Thus far, most of the betrayals that I've typed out have been in-game. The ones I've saved for this last entry are ones that hurt on a more personal level, as they were mostly out of game. Some of these only 1 or 2 people witnessed. Some of them we were all there for. Buckle up, thank you for reading, and please learn these red flags so you never pull a stupid like we did. Starting small, I mentioned that I started my first campaign while I was playing with Iris. I've covered most of this, but I'd like to expand on it quite a bit, as I feel the context helps explain why I stayed with Iris for so long. My first game didn't actually start out as a full game, but rather a one-shot that I'd based off a setting I made a long time ago, just to test the waters of being a DM. I was rather afraid I'd misuse the power that people trust DMs with, as up until this point I thought Iris was the only good DM I'd ever had. Everyone was really encouraging though, with a one-shot taking place in a woodland library as the party was trying to find a missing noble. The setup was pretty simple, but to rush through it, there was a series of breadcrumbs and NPCs that all pointed to a specific item in the library as being dangerous, and one of the players was trying to subtly guide the rest of the players into messing with the item despite the clear danger. Iris decided not to participate, stating that they had control issues with not being in complete control of the world they play in. The people who actually played in the one-shot actually seemed to love the outcome of the session, even though they all messed with the item, which actually led to a character dying. I was a bit worried that it wasn't that great until one of the first things out of the players' mouths was, "When is the next session?" It made me really happy that people liked it so much and that I hadn't messed it up. When I told Iris how it went and that I'd be prepping a continuation of the story, Iris told me what I'd done, letting one player have extra knowledge and be a built-in traitor, was really screwed up, and that they'd have been pissed if they were one of the players. I pointed out that this was just a test one-shot and everyone seemed to like how it ended, and Iris just kinda dropped it, but every now and then she would bring up how they hated that I'd done such a thing in any game. The character who betrayed the party was pretty much there to add a wildcard element and to help point the players towards choices they could make in the game. It never forced anyone to do anything. In fact, that character's now an NPC in the setting that most players seem to really get a kick out of. Memorable, you know? Anyways, I go make a second session and Iris asks if they can join. At the time, I really looked up to Iris as a DM because I was under the impression that they knew what they were doing. The horror stories hadn't really sunk in yet, as silly as that might seem. So of course, I said yes. Please make a serious character. Iris came back with a character that technically fit all the requirements. Level 6, simple backstory, reason to be in the library. But he was also basically the uber nerd with a stereotypical lisp. In the mini session I did to bring Iris up to speed and give them a feel for the setting and a chance to give me advice, they had their bard harass the attendant assigned to them within the library. Not in any creepy way to be clear, but more like making her life miserable. I probably should have stopped Iris then, But then I pointed out that I asked them to make a serious character. They just said,
He is a serious character. Don't worry, he'll be fine in session.
and I accepted that. Again, not my brightest moment, but I looked up to Iris when it came to D&D. Session 2 of what is now a 3-shot rolls around and Iris's character joins the party. Within a couple minutes of joining the party to help them solve their mysteries and go talk to the librarian, Iris had their character, who I'm gonna call Bob, assert that he simply knew things without asking me several times, and tried to prompt several rolls in the middle of someone else talking before Bob just kinda started annoying Rogue's character. Iris had a crush on Rogue out of character, but I never had the chance to poke at them with an actual PC. It wasn't the worst thing ever, but it was pretty awkward. Between the lisp, Bob insisting on following Rogue around, interruptions, and constant assertions of knowledge, the mood strained pretty fast. Iris tried to interrupt Barbarian during an important moment to talk to Rogue several times, and I told Iris, "Hold on a moment, Iris. Barbarian is saying something important. We'll get to you in just a second." Iris responded to what I thought was a gentle correction by muting and then leaving the call. A few moments later, I got a message from Iris saying that they were sorry. It was their first time trying to be a PC in like 10 years and that they were embarrassed. This apology made sense to me. We all get a little too excited sometimes. So I moved on and the rest of the session was pretty great according to my players. I was gonna put something self-disparaging here, but they got on to me. Lol. Ranger thinks Iris might have actually been rage quitting in that moment, but as neither of us can read their mind in the past, I choose to be charitable. Ranger had been playing with Iris longer and had no such sympathy. Fast forward several sessions and the one-shot has morphed into a full campaign. We've expanded everyone's backstories, the world lore's been presented, and the party is getting ready to set out on their quest. Iris messages me to see if they can give it another go as a player. I am of course excited and say sure, but this time we'll build the character together and tie him into the world so that Iris doesn't feel like they have to fall back on a stereotype nerd character. We make a paladin. Do what I think was actually a pretty good roleplay about exploring Paladin's history, and Paladin even has an introductory mini-session to meet up with half the party. Honestly, it was all shaping up to be pretty good. Iris had made a solid character with a solid story and even a small bit of tension with Rogue from the start. The night of the Paladin's intro comes, and about 30 minutes before the session, Iris messages me to tell me that they're dropping. They couldn't handle the stress of not being in control of the world they were playing in. Rogue thinks it might have had something to do with the extremely light, built-in tension with their character, but I can't say for sure. So I quickly reworked some stuff and the party ends up with a mostly silent barbarian to journey with them. Side note, I don't know why they adore this barbarian way too much. We thought we wouldn't hear anything more from Iris that night, but about an hour into the session they joined the call, and then they hung up, and then they joined it again. This repeated quite a few times. I'm guessing they were checking to see if we were having fun without them, but I'm not sure. What definitely was happening was that they just started making random sounds when they joined the call before immediately hanging up again. Honestly, this interaction was probably when I started to view Iris as a middle schooler despite being in their mid-20s. Between the hopping in and out and Iris sending tons of random memes to the group chat through the entirety of the session, the other players were starting to get super irritated. Iris even started responding to every single post any player made in the channels as we track loot, party inventory, and lore tidbits with,
"Oh, this is going to be the BBEG."
Eventually we get through the session and the players are having fun but are clearly irritated at Iris's behavior. Iris spammed up,
"Are y'all done yet?"
and when I said yes, they hopped in the call. I would like to emphasize again that I really looked up to this person as a DM and was excited and hopeful to get their approval during table talk. Instead of wanting to talk about the session that just happened though, Iris launched into essentially a lecture about their own games. They only wanted to talk about what they were going to do in their next session. Repeatedly told people to vote right now on the new post they had just made, and essentially allowed no room for anyone to talk about the session. I was a lot less confident at the time, and was used to being kinda walked over, but I found out later that most of the players were absolutely pissed about this. When I talked to Iris later about maybe giving people time to breathe and do table talk for my games too, they told me if they wanted that kinda privacy, I'd have to make a new server for my campaign. So that's what we did, with Iris making me promise that we wouldn't talk about them in the new server. Ranger wanted me to mention here that even after making this new server, Iris would tag people in their D&D server and post memes throughout most of the session when the campaign was running. Some people decided to mute that server because of this. It was around this time that Iris began searching for a new person to roleplay with on session night so they wouldn't feel left out. this will come back later. Nicer little tangent here. Iris had a tendency to add new players, kick players, add campaigns, delete campaigns, make new servers, and then delete new servers. When I type it out like that, it sounds awful, but we were having just enough fun with each other that it seemed justifiable. When Iris recruited me to their campaigns, they recruited another player at the same time. That player didn't make it to the first session, and I was under the impression they dropped out, but I later found out Iris had kicked them in the week leading up to it, because
He wasn't active enough. It was giving me a bad feeling.
I didn't recognize this as a red flag at the time, but I probably should have. Within the next 6 months, Iris kicked I think 9 or 10 players, some for a valid reason. Most for less valid. Ranger is informing me that in Iris's longest-lasting campaign, Iris had a total of 21 players come and go in less than a year. Iris would make a new campaign and a new server to go with it, although most of that happened before I joined the group. Whenever Iris canceled or ended a campaign, they would delete the server without warning and without giving people a chance to save anything, often without telling people the campaign was canceled. At one point, Psychic woke up to find the server gone and thought they had been kicked from the group. A little while after I was brought into the group, Ranger laid down an ultimatum that if Iris deleted one more server without warning Ranger, they would not join the next one. This saved us from the server hopping, thankfully, and they never deleted another one while I was with them. Unfortunately, this did not stop Iris from deleting campaigns or Roll20 campaigns. Honestly, I could probably make a post just on deleted campaigns, but I don't have the energy for that. To break it down, in 6 months, Iris canceled 12 campaigns. Although, to be fair, only about 6 of those got off the ground. The main campaign I joined for didn't get canceled until right before I left the group, so it seemed more stable than it was. While I'm talking about canceled campaigns, I should probably come clean here and admit that I completely failed repeatedly to learn the lesson of don't help Iris world build, as I helped Iris make entire cultures and settings, maps, and scenarios for each of these. In fact, if I'm being blunt, I probably did most of the work and I was stupid for not stopping. Lesson learned. At one point, Iris and I made a test campaign with a bunch of test characters. We both put a lot of work into making these test characters, and I was really proud of one in particular. It was purely mechanical stuff, nothing to be emotionally invested in. But Iris told me one day that they wanted to delete the campaign. I messaged them back, okay, just hold on until I can save the sheets later today. Iris said okay, and then when I got home, the campaign and all the sheets were gone. Iris blamed me for this with,
You know I have to delete things. You should have saved them earlier.
I don't have any more to add on to that. I was just kind of flabbergasted. Iris would even send a message to give us information and then immediately delete it. And I had to ask them to stop because clearly not everyone is online 24/7 and they were missing things. Some of us had a discussion later, and with everything Iris showed us, it seemed the main reason they were obsessed with deleting things was a combination of housekeeping and not wanting to leave any records. Iris would get pissed off if other people deleted or edited the things that they posted. We didn't see that red flag, and we really should have. I don't have a single positive thing to say about what I'm about to type out, so we are going to keep this one short and bitter. Iris kept people's initial messages inquiring about joining the group in response to their looking for game posts. For one of our players, Iris bullied the player a bit by apparently telling them repeatedly that it was the weirdest message they've ever gotten. The player read it to me once, and while I don't remember the exact details, it seemed pretty normal. Iris also kept Psychic's first message and showed it to many other players as,
This is what not to do in a D&D application.
while mentioning Psychic by name. I know this because Iris told me themselves. Earlier on, I mentioned that because Iris was feeling left out during my campaign as they had no one to talk to outside of the group, they decided to find some new people to roleplay with on my campaign nights. I don't have a good way to put this, so here we go. We earlier on asked Iris not to add anyone into the group who was not an adult. Apparently, we were not specific enough because they added in a player who had just turned 17 and did not tell us until after they had started playing. It was incredibly uncomfortable, and we told Iris not to do it again. They asked us for a specific age, and we had already said they had to be over 18. I didn't think we needed to say even higher. A few weeks later, Iris told us that they had found a new person to roleplay with on game night, and that they were hoping to bring her into the group at some point. Iris said it would be a few months before they can officially join. I, with the others backing, had asked Iris not to add any new players without a Iris getting to meet them first, as up until this point, players were added at random, so Iris wanted us to meet this girl in a private call, so we could get to know her before Iris added her to the group. It was during this call that one of us asked how old this girl was, because she sounded young.
I am 17 years old. I will be 18 in a month and a half.
Iris jumped in with,
I'll just roleplay with her in private until she's old enough.
I feel bad for the kid for the conversation that happened next, as we made it clear to Iris in no uncertain terms that this was not acceptable. I really don't think I need to explain why this is creepy as fuck, which is good, because I don't think I have words for it. We apologized to the girl and started a new call without her, and went through with Iris that this creepy behavior wasn't it. Iris asked us if 18 isn't old enough, how old do players have to be to join us? Because they get along with people younger than them and they blame their autism for the misunderstanding. Long story short, we made Iris promise to make all recruiting posts 20 and older only from now on, and to not roleplay with teenagers in private. And now we reach the peak of Betrayal Mountain, and I'm not gonna lie, this one is personal. Remember how I said that Iris liked kicking people from campaigns? Some of those were super valid, but one person they wanted to kick was because they had missed a couple of sessions to try and take care of their mental health. Iris confided in me in a private call that they had been wanting to kick Ranger, who had been in the group the longest, mind you, from the group for a while because of sessions that she missed. Ranger was beloved by everyone else in the group, and I tried to explain to Iris that kicking her was unnecessary and offered alternatives. I suggested talking to Ranger, or maybe asking her to take a hiatus until she felt better. We could even have her character go do a secret mission or something. At the very least, Iris shouldn't just kick Ranger without talking to her. I must have spent a good hour or two talking to Iris before they gave in and agreed not to kick Ranger. A few months later, Ranger is still with the group and not missing sessions anymore. Things were going okay, honestly. We were sharing stories, and one involving one of Ranger's characters came up, and Iris decided to share the following.
Ranger is lucky she's still in the group. OP tried to convince me to kick her months ago because she was missing so many sessions and I had to talk her down.
It was precisely that moment that I checked out from trying to help Iris in any way. The group departed from Iris less than a month later. But that's the story for the next and final post, where I will write about why Iris is called Iris, how we tried to fix things, and how the group is doing now. Thank you for reading our incredibly long vent. TLDR, our former DM discouraged me when I launched my first game, trying to make my game about them. DM tried to add minors to our roleplay group multiple times and mocked other players who joined the group before. They then lied and blamed their desire to kick someone on me in public. Hey, so spoiler alert, but the next part is not the last part. Oh god, we're gearing up to have the longest RPG horror story video on the website, aren't we? In the next part, we got a special guest coming in to give their perspective on this dumpster fire. But before that, let's talk about what happened here. Awful ironic how Iris is out here trying to give people advice on what not to do to avoid being seen as a weirdo. Hey, here's one for you. How not to be weird. Step 1. Don't offer to seclude yourself with a minor for the purposes of engaging in roleplay, you dork. Let's go ahead and throw out that last little bit of goodwill from me that I tried to deliver with the "at least Iris isn't dangerous" line from the last part. Sure, I don't even know why I'm surprised. It's honestly so sad how relatable it is that OP once idolized Iris. Social parasites like Iris thrive by putting themselves in a position of power and influence, and in the setting of D&D, that position happens to be the DM. Yes, OP and their group are kinda dumb and or pushovers for letting Iris get away with so much crap, but it's also pretty easy for me to understand. Iris has shown herself to be a lot of things. A lot of things, and a microscopic amount of them are good. But what Iris has never shown herself to be is stupid. Okay, maybe a little bit stupid when it comes to measuring distance, but you get my point. Don't get it twisted. It is not a coincidence that Iris finds herself in this place of admiration and authority, which we can plainly see by how agitated she seems to get when she's removed from that powerful position when our OP takes the DM reins. And her manipulation streak continues when she whips out the tried and true "I got the tism" to avoid anything resembling needing accountability. Here's a secret you might not have heard, Iris. This is the D&D community. We all have autism. But in all seriousness though, that part seemed extra scummy to me. The implication being that somehow losing all sense of what's right and wrong just comes with being neurodivergent. As if knowing someone has a mental condition is the same thing as knowing that they're a bad person and their crappy behavior should just be accepted and tolerated for reasons. Yeah, no, that's not how it works. Let's move on to the next part, yeah? I'm about to yak all over the inside of my recording booth. Part 8 comes to us from Reddit user Majestic3727 and is titled The Ballad of Iris, Eye of the Storm. Hey, this is the player known as Rogue in all these Iris stories. This one is going to be a bit more emotional than Blue's posts and will also show how vulnerable I was when this happened. So things started getting funky when Iris and I first met. During my interview to get into the campaign, we talked for about 2 hours when they began to flirt with me. It was weird and I felt uncomfortable, but I uncomfortably flirted back because I mimic behavior when I'm feeling uncomfortable. When I jokingly said the line, "What, you already have a crush on me?" I was joking, having a goof. Iris became upset and made a rigid boundary for me to never flirt with them again, because they were uncomfortable and didn't want it to happen. To make it clear, I'm okay with the boundary that was set. I never wanted any flirting to begin with. Iris would later break this rule themselves, but that's a later problem. So when I first joined Iris's campaign, I'd like to say it was fine, but it wasn't really. The first campaign Iris included me in had a sky city and a mutant zombie apocalypse, as did many of their future games. Iris made the latter half of that first session about my character and her mother, revealing a significant plot event during her introduction. I felt guilty because Iris became upset at how they revealed the plot too early, and now they were worried that we would ruin the story and speedrun the final boss. Even though it was their own decision to make the reveal. In reality, it wasn't a huge deal because we already knew we were too underleveled to fight such a strong boss. But Iris's complaints made me feel guilty. I also felt guilty for standing up to Iris later at one point in time. At one point, Iris was my only friend. I was very lonely and having a rough time at the cusp of adulthood. I wasn't close to anyone else, so standing up to them and putting my foot down rocked the boat a little. You see, Iris had a nasty habit of kicking out players, and in the Sky City campaign, they kicked out a person for a stupid reason. The Juggernaut left their mic on for about a minute to grab their dinner from the kitchen. I told Iris that this was unfair, and they got annoyed at me. Although they did not snap at me, they did realize I was right, and eventually apologized to Juggernaut, but did not allow him back into the game because
It would be too embarrassing.
as I mentioned before, I was incredibly lonely, so I let Iris get away with a lot of stuff. I was desperate for friends, and I didn't want Iris to kick me out of the group as I started to get closer to everyone in the group. Over time, Iris's attitude worsened, and they began getting annoyed whenever I disagreed with them, and they would snap at me.
You're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not thinking straight. Did you have your coffee?
It didn't seem that bad, but it did hurt my feelings. One moment that stands out was when I resisted when they were trying to make one of my characters in the Dark Fairy Tale campaign an actual vampire. She would have to kill and consume a person every day and just derail the party plans, forcing them to travel at night, basically doing a lot of shit to make it harder to travel. Not to mention the party probably being mad about the murder. So when I started to not like the idea of killing a shit ton of people, Iris got upset when I said I didn't want to do this. They got so upset that they snapped at me, yelled at me about making a mistake, and that I should never play a warlock again. And we silently sat there after they deleted the character sheet. I am an anxious person, so I asked if I made a mistake. They said yes. At one point, Iris accused me of being unable to play my character correctly because I was starting my period. They had a very creepy interest in that part of my health as well. So that's when we started to bring in our mediator Blue, the original OP. She's a fantastic person, and she wanted to see the best in Iris, but also wanted to protect me because I was very young, 19 at the time. Naive and clingy. So during the moderation, Blue settled us down, trying to get us both to think straight, and we patched it up. The thing is that it became a habit they would do something terrible and snap at me, and then we would go to Blue to moderate the conversation. Blue would talk some sense into Iris and tell me that I am justified in my feelings and that I need to communicate more. Well, during one of these conversations, Iris decided to take advantage of this and started to twist the words in their favor, saying that I'm a liar for not communicating my feelings very well, saying that it was all my fault for not telling them how I feel. Blue tried to put a stop to that as soon as they noticed, but it was already too late. Iris felt justified. So to explain the complications during the first mediation, a while after that, Iris admitted to having a crush on me. Just a small one, but still a crush. In hindsight, I noticed that the way they would have these incel characters flirt with mine. The first time it happened was with the vampire warlock, this dude she was flirting with to get information, and she led him to a spooky lake. He couldn't take no for an answer. So she killed him because she was a ruthless kind of uncaring creature. Iris then retaliated by making him immortal and giving him the abilities to always track my character. Then it started to happen more with the Barbie Barbarian character and my rogue character, whom I am named after. And it was just really awkward after that, mainly because before the crush confession, they would say things to embarrass me because I had my phone on speaker all the time on calls. They would say, and I quote,
Rogue, I care so much about you, and I think you're a genuinely good person, and if I lived closer to you, I would date you.
What made things more embarrassing that if you scroll back up to the top, they told me not to flirt with them when they first met, right? Remember when I said that I had to flirt with a character for my vampire character? Iris had this cute little rule that you had to flirt with them, not the NPC.
You have to seduce me, not the character.
As you know, we barely had free time with Iris. They would call all of us constantly. First, it started off with a psychic, then Ranger, me, and then after me it was Blue. During these calls, Iris criticized me for my future decisions when I was underage. I said that when I was 21, I would be willing to try alcohol. They got upset with me, saying that if I did that, I would get addicted, and then they wouldn't be friends with me anymore. They were trying to control my life through a screen. One way that sticks out in my mind is that they would make fun of me in cruel ways. I have a massive insecurity, and I told them about it, thinking that I could trust them. Then one day, we were watching YouTube, and we stopped to talk about my insecurity a little. They then said to me,
What if you met the most perfect person who loves and cares for you and treated you kindly, but then they saw your insecurity and called you disgusting?
I was too stunned to speak for a while, and then I was honest and said that I would be heartbroken and that the question actually hurt. So I respected the boundary they had established in the beginning, and that subject was never mentioned again. Although what hurt me even worse was that when we were talking about unsexy again and what happened to my character, the Barbie Barbarian, we realized that Iris's fetishes would affect the game. As you can see, it impacted Blue's character, but it also affected mine. See, my Barbie Barbarian, most of the time before the campaign started, spent most of her time hypnotized, which was Iris's thing. The hypnosis and mind control for both characters was Iris's idea, and as they later confessed, their favorite kink. TLDR. Iris was my best friend. I thought they had my best interests at heart, but all they did was hurt me, yell at me, and try to control me. Iris is very controlling, and I'm just glad that I have my wonderful group of friends, and I'm glad that we left that situation. Well, 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 would you look at that? More revelations, more sex pest shenanigans. Ugh, Iris is just gross. Just foul beyond words. But it was nice being able to get Rogue's perspective on this craziness, and not gonna lie, kinda sad too, in a sort of Greek tragedy kinda way. It really goes to show why people will stick around in these kinds of stories. Not gonna lie, it does kinda start to irritate me seeing the millions of commenters going,
Why didn't you leave? You should have just left the game. If it were me, I would have just left the game. I am so cool and smart and self-aware. I would never let myself be caught in this situation.
People have their reasons, and the blunt reality is that these RPG horror story antagonists are not just fictional villains written up for the sake of challenging a kick-ass protagonist. Unless it's an OP looking to practice some sad creative writing for Reddit karma. Disgusting. But you get my point. These are people's friends and sometimes family who are at the root of these games going sour. Iris is a master manipulator. They create situations where people don't want to recognize their flaws until it's too late. Hell, even now, Blue and Rogue are realizing that Iris was implanting their own kinks into the games in ways they didn't even realize. Iris, the Machiavellian autistic pervert. Ugh, what a title. Someone get him a movie deal. Hollywood's crawling with manipulative pervs, so they'll fit right in. I'm about ready to be done with Iris, aren't you? Well, we got one more part left, so let's finish this thing. Our final part is once again written by Reddit user Blue Viera and is titled The Ballad of Iris. Iris herself. Hello there, fellow horror story enthusiasts. It has finally come time for the final horror story I will be posting about my group's former DM, who we will call Iris. While I have enough stories to make a few more additional posts, I think I've tortured you enough. In these stories, I will refer to everyone involved besides Iris by the class they played in the first campaign that I joined the group for. Today's topics will cover how we tried to deal with Iris, how the group finally jumped ship and took the oars with us, and how we're doing now. But first, I think it's finally time to reveal why we call Iris Iris. Thank you for reading. TLDR and past stories about Iris are at the bottom. The all-seeing Iris. So I think it's a pretty common thing for DMs to have recurring characters who appear in either multiple campaigns or even in every one of their campaigns. I have one of my own that my players haven't met yet, and I think we can all agree as long as these characters don't become the main focus or as long as they stay in the background or really be anything other than an oppressive in-your-face distraction, there really isn't any problem with having a reoccurring character or two. Iris didn't have one or two, Iris had many. The evil council from the prequel campaign I mentioned? Recurring characters. Melissa especially is apparently one of Iris's favorite ones, who is quite often a criminal genius the party cannot defeat. Nelby and her council of undead children from the fairy tale campaign? Wow, they're also recurring villains you probably cannot defeat. Iris's favorite artificer super genius the players cannot ever defeat because they have infinite simulacrums? Recurring character. Funny side note, Iris said no matter what, this guy was the most handsome character. Also, while we couldn't defeat him, his stolen player character turned NPC could in a cutscene. So these characters and a few others, I think, prove Iris kinda had a thing for making every reoccurring character be a smarter than the player's villain. However, there's one recurring character who stands far and above the rest of them. I'd like to introduce the omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, omni-pain-in-your-ass goddess of mimetic evil, Iris. Yes, Iris put themselves in the game as a fourth wall breaking goddess of evil who showed up everywhere, was responsible for literally everything, and was
my actual eye in the game.
Yeah, the flags are as crimson as Iris's eye is. The giant floating eyeball evil god was our DM with all of their meta knowledge. To differentiate the real person and the goddess, I will continue to call our former DM Iris, and let's call the evil god Pink Eye. Pink Eye had meta knowledge from every game Iris ever put her in, which is apparently all of them. If a player outsmarted her in one way in a past campaign, even a past group, then Pink Eye in a future campaign could not be outsmarted the same way again, because they had all of the DM's knowledge. No matter what patron you chose, if you took Warlock in-game, Pink Eye was your secret patron. Warlocks were basically accidental clerics of Pink Eye. In the Sky City campaign, before I joined the group, there were 2 Warlock multi-classes, and they took different patrons, only to find out that their patrons were both somehow Pink Eye, despite being voiced differently. Remember the goddess of evil who made multiple deals with the party in the prequel campaign before turning a player character into an infinitely powerful NPC boss? Yeah, that was Pink Eye. Remember Scarlet's grandma, who was secretly for some reason responsible for every bad thing that ever happened to the party ever and made them sign a magic contract saying they would never try to harm her? Yeah, that was Pink Eye. Iris revealed that after canceling the campaign that Pink Eye had trapped Nelby in her straw-ass hell and turned her into a villain and made all of us come there to screw with Nelby even more. My orphan raised by wolves? Yeah, she was a homunculus made by Pink Eye so that Iris could give their self-insert god even more control over our backgrounds. In one campaign, Iris even forced Rogue to play Pink Eye's demigod daughter, and then just had it basically be a trauma fest of Pink Eye torturing Rogue in her dreams every birthday. It's a good thing we never had a campaign actually make it all the way to the end, because it turns out Pink Eye was responsible for every villain and all the chaos in every campaign, and was apparently the actual secret final boss of multiple campaigns. This was spoiled to us, by the way. All we know about the fight is that Pink Eye is stronger than Nelby, who was stronger than the CR40 vampire mommy, etc, etc. So I'm pretty sure the fights would have been unwinnable. Iris told us that Pink Eye was so strong that there were no other evil gods in any of their campaigns, because Pink Eye was above them all in leaps and bounds. In the longest lasting campaign, Iris told us that if Pink Eye ever died in any campaign, she would die in every campaign, as she was a meta existence. When the party started to actually talk about hunting Pink Eye down at max level and killing her, suddenly Iris changed their mind and said Pink Eye cannot be killed except one universe at a time, and she exists in every possible multiverse ever. Wow, what a fun and interesting enemy. We asked Iris many times to please stop reusing all these villains, and especially Pink Eye. Iris's very telling response was,
I will never stop using these characters in my games because using them over and over is how I have fun.
I think it goes without saying that at this point, Iris basically admitted that they hate when the players beat one of their villains. We actually left soon after they said this. The straws that break. So let's talk about why the group didn't recognize sooner everything wrong with Iris and leave immediately, as well as how we tried to fix it and how it all ended. What you need to know about Iris is that they feel so close to being an excellent DM. Iris put a lot of detail into characters, even if their world building is a bit off. Iris had a talent for making characters, villains, and settings feel very interesting in the moment. The Dark Fairy Tale campaign seemed amazing for the first couple of sessions until it was revealed that it was just Diet Curse of Strahd, and the fairy tale references stopped. Cecil the Giant Robot Inventor seemed like a compelling character until he showed up a dozen times in 5 sessions, and Iris revealed that he couldn't be reasoned with but wouldn't leave us alone. And perhaps most importantly, Iris seemed like a friend until they didn't. Iris is a sad person. They'd present themselves in a confident and professional manner, but it was all a lie. Iris would draw you in and pretend to care about you, to want to know all your secrets and support you, but really they just wanted to control us and to have ammunition to make fun of us, even if they didn't realize it themselves. Iris wanted us to be at their beck and call. We weren't Iris's friends, we were Iris's audience and victims. Iris presented themselves as a confident person, secretly filled with insecurity. I don't want to assume it was all on purpose, but Iris wields their problems as a get-out-of-jail-free card. They are a master manipulator, and I don't believe it was all unintentional. But I also don't think it was all intended to cause harm. Regardless of intention, it was bad. Iris would kick out any player who saw them as a threat, a person likely to call them out. They preyed on marginalized people while presenting themselves as one. Any man who joined the group, if Iris didn't consider them queer-coded and they had any degree of experience, then they were gone. Longtime players who weren't passive, gone. Basically, Iris sought out kind, passive people to surround themselves with and then held on with a vice grip. I don't want to minimize the pain Iris caused, nor the fact that I firmly believe that they should not be in this hobby. But the anxiety they showed, the fear of being left alone, that much was real and it tugged at our heartstrings. They painted themselves as a martyr and used that as a weapon to keep us close. There is no red flag more vibrantly crimson about Iris than the fact that they advertised themselves as an expert DM who had over a dozen years of experience and whose favorite part of TTRPGs was making friends. And yet, they don't have a single past player still willing to play with them. In fact, as far as I know, no one will even talk to them. But there's a reason the boiling frog metaphor is a thing. Iris has major control issues, some of which stem from their past, and some of which they are causing themselves by refusing to let go of the reins or even try to change just a little bit. Towards the end, we saw Iris spiral and quickly establish and destroy a second group where they made a 5e campaign where level 1 casters didn't have enough magic power to cast any spells. That group didn't even last 2 weeks. Iris had gotten so paranoid about players being able to break their unfair worlds that they considered literally everything power gaming and overpowered. Iris only listens temporarily to any criticism or boundary. They put on a facade of respectability and understanding, but they don't really care. A month or 2 after I joined the group, the party started giving gentle corrections to Iris. Sometimes they would just adjust a bit, and it would seem like they listened, but it always reversed to new players. Eventually, this reached a head when Iris was in a call with Rogue and yelled at them. Iris really wanted to control Rogue, the youngest of us, most out of anyone, and when Rogue resisted about Iris wanting to make their character a murderous true vampire, Iris blew up, and long story short, we tried to fix things, and I mediated the first of several observed calls between Iris and Rogue. Before I expand on this, I want to say that Iris asked me to not tell anyone about any of this, which, in hindsight, was just further attempts to control the group. Iris and Rogue had a conversation where I helped them come to the conclusion that Iris should not be alone in calls with Rogue anymore. We were trying to fix the friendship between the two of them, but we probably should have dropped Iris right there in hindsight. From there, I began to regularly sit in on any call where Rogue and Iris were together to try and talk Iris step by step through things and try to help Rogue clearly lay out their grievances. To be honest, there were probably hundreds of pages of material worth of things to write about here, but long story short, we tried very hard to help Iris improve their behavior and to make the friend group stable. None of it worked, and Iris eventually admitted that they weren't even gonna try anymore. I would like to add in here that all the help we tried to give Iris was largely prompted by Iris asking us to help them become better, but it wasn't really genuine. Iris would say things like,
Please help me. I don't know what is offensive. You have to tell me. I don't know what isn't hurtful. It's not my fault. My autism makes me not understand.
never mind that they weaponized their autism when half the party was also on the spectrum. We were manipulated to the very end. Iris's harassment of Rogue and Ranger reached a breaking point, and Rogue left with Ranger leaving minutes after. Ranger had just been waiting for someone else to quit. At this point, Psychic, Barbarian, Fighter, and myself were all about done with Iris anyway. We had given them more than just the benefit of the doubt, and more chances than any truly well-adjusted person would. Within minutes of Rogue's departure message, Iris canceled all the long-term campaigns they had been running because
I can't bring myself to run the campaigns she was in. I would think about her every time.
the rest of us lasted only one session longer. After Iris started a new campaign and we had the first session, I realized I'm only here for the other players. So I asked Psychic if they wanted to leave. Psychic said yes. So we asked Barbarian and Fighter, and they said yes, with Fighter saying that watching the dumpster fire had lost its charm. And just like that, Iris was gone. We all blocked them at the same time after firing off a warning to the brand new players about what they were doing, and that was definitely the right choice. No D&D is better than bad D&D, and a bad friend is not a friend at all. Thankfully, however, this did not leave us with no D&D, the after party. So the group may have left Iris, but none of us lost each other. My first campaign is still running over a year later, and the gang is all still here. And on top of this, Barbarian stepped up and took over DMing the remnants of the traditional fantasy campaign Iris canceled. And Barbarian, yeah, he's an amazing DM. We have been having an absolute blast, and none of us have really had any problems from the group as far as I can tell. We started having Cards Against Humanity nights, movie nights, hanging out all the time. To me, these people are family now. To be blunt, I love my group. We are just having an absolute blast. I even ran a spoof rhyming Grinch one-shot where the party had to deal with a beholder who had pink eye named Iris, who was retconning all the characters' lives and even Santa out of existence. When the party got close to beating Iris, they retconned their minions' deaths several times before the minions got sick of it and started a union. They even ripped up a character sheet, killing an NPC and retconned a party member's trauma to try and make them less adventure-y. We are happy. Pretty much the moment we left Iris behind, the stress disappeared. This gaming group? I think we're gonna go the distance. My first campaign is about to enter its final arc, and the players are achieving goals IRL. We support and love each other. Our ending with Iris wasn't particularly exciting or explosive, but it ended up so satisfying. Iris did their absolute best to try and keep us separated, and because of that, they brought us all together. Iris is the villain of a closed chapter of our story, and we still have so many pages to fill. Remember, if you see the red eye of Iris gazing down upon you, do not go towards the light. Thank you for reading. End of story. And thus concludes the saga of Iris. Holy narcissist, Batman, she literally made herself into a god. Low-key, I can't even think of a better metaphor to explain how Iris views herself and the relationship she has with her players. Interesting how her self-insert is always a villain, huh? Now that pink-eye beholder? OP might have a problem with letting toxic people live in their head rent-free, but it was petty enough to make my little black heart feel something, so I can give it a pass. And honestly, it sounds pretty damn therapeutic. Plus, a revolting monster with vile corruption oozing from its eye seems like a much more appropriate metaphor for who Iris is as a person. Now, that was a beefy story. Be sure to go hug your loved ones after that because, oh boy, I've been in this recording booth for, God, I don't know how long. This is by far the longest story I've ever read, and I'm fucking tired. But you know what? It was all worth it to bring this story to you guys. Definitely easy to learn a lesson or two about manipulation and how toxic people can sneak their way into positions of power even though you're being vigilant. Plus, shout out OP for their character growth. No D&D is bad D&D. It really is the golden rule. Damn shame it took you guys so long to learn it, but learn it you absolutely did. Not gonna lie, I've seen the Ballad of Iris floating around RPG horror stories for a while. while, and I've always flirted with covering it, but always dipped out at the last minute because it just seemed like such a beast to compile into one video. But it's been a while since I've compiled a full RPG horror story movie for you guys, and well, I think y'all deserve it. That being said, I'm happy that it ended the way it did, and I hope you all get to take away something from this. What exactly? Well, I got no fucking clue, but I guess that's subjective. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, after all. Or should I say, the iris of the beholder. I'm just kidding, there's nothing beautiful about that creature, and I got a 2-hour audio recording to prove it. And on that note, I think that's a good place to wrap up. As per usual with the Leviathan tier stories, no Gallery of the Drake this time. Between the sponsor and the girth of this video, I would prefer if my video editor did not keel over from exhaustion. I need him for future schemes. Now, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and upload your fan art to the official Den of the Drake subreddit, linked in the description. And if you feel like supporting my channel further, my Patreon and merchandise links are in the description. I would like to thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you next time in the Den of the Drake.